Chapter 595. Boom! Amidst the deafening noise, 5 powerful sword rays slashed at Julingshen. Caught off guard, the Julingshen was sent flying by the 5 sword rays and smashed into the ground, creating a huge pit. The entire peak of the mountain had completely collapsed. Numerous gullies had appeared, extending in all directions and spreading across the entire mountain peak. The mountain peak had already been torn apart and was on the verge of collapse. Now, after being hit by a few more sword rays, the mountain peak could no longer bear it and collapsed on the spot. With a series of muffled rumbles, the entire mountain peak turned into gravel and dirt, piling up into a ruined hill hundreds of meters high. The dust and dirt that rose into the sky covered the sky for more than 10 miles. The green ancient tree and the ancient statue were buried by countless gravel and dirt. The Julingshen was also buried in the ruins. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. In the night sky, Qianshan Jinwu, Di Jianqing, and the others suddenly revealed joyful smiles. Great! This time, the Cyclops will be seriously injured even if he doesn't die. The 5 prodigies were certain that Julingshen would be killed or severely injured by their ultimate moves when he was caught off guard. Qianshan Jinwu looked at Ji Tianqing condescendingly and said in a dignified voice, "Ji Tianqing, you have done a good job. You have successfully led the Julingshen here and attracted his attention. If we can kill the Julingshen, you will have a great contribution." He had the attitude of a leader and seemed to be praising his subordinate. However, Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly and said in a low voice, "You idiots, you've ruined my plan. You are too naive. Do you think the Julingshen is so easy to kill?" He had finally found the abandoned temple and risked his life to lead the Julingshen here. The Julingshen was about to uncover the mystery of the statue and the ancient tree. His plan was about to succeed. But at this time, Qianshan Jinwu and the others attacked and destroyed the entire mountain peak. How could he not be angry? Qianshan Jinwu, Di Jianqing, and the others were stunned after being scolded by him. After recollecting themselves, the heaven's favorites' expressions changed. They stared at him with anger. Qianshan Jinwu's face was as cold as ice. He said in a cold tone, "Ji Tianqing, your previous performance was commendable. You made me look at you in a new light. But now, it seems that you've long been scared out of your wits by the mighty miracle god. You're actually so timid. Truly disappointing." Perhaps he still had to consider his status as a disciple of an aristocratic family and pretend to be reserved and noble, so his words were more tactful. Di Jianqing didn't have so many scruples. He looked coldly at Ji Tianqing and sneered, "Ji Tianqing, do you think that by luring the mighty miracle god here, you can completely solve the problem? Do you think that just because you've made a contribution, you can be arrogant and insult other participants as you please? If not for our help, you would have been killed by the mighty miracle god long ago. How could you have survived until now?" The other 2 participants also reprimanded Ji Tianqing with righteous indignation. Only Yu Zhengfei frowned. After pondering for a moment, he asked, "Ji Tianqing, what is this mountain peak? I saw that there seemed to be a statue on the mountain peak before." Obviously, Yu Zhengfei realized something and guessed that Ji Tianqing might have found some clues. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "There are 2 temples outside the giant miracle city. The temple that Di Jianqing found was a new temple built 200 years ago. Before that, there was a dilapidated temple that had been used for more than 100 years on this mountain. There was an ancient tree and a statue in the abandoned temple. They seemed to be a little strange and had a very close relationship with the mighty miracle god. If we want to completely solve the crisis of the giant miracle city, it's impossible to rely on killing alone. We must find the root of the problem." Ji Tianqing only used a few words to explain the matter concisely and clearly. Qianshan Jinwu, Di Jianqing, Yu Zhengfei, and the others immediately understood the key of the problem and their faces changed on the spot. Di Jianqing, in particular, looked unnatural and a touch of embarrassment flashed in his eyes. Qianshan Zhenwu did not change his expression and did not feel ashamed at all. He asked, Ji Tianqing, do you mean that the mighty miracle god's attack on the people in the city has something to do with the ancient tree and the statue? Before Ji Tianqing had time to answer, the ruins under his feet shook violently. There was a loud rumbling sound and the ruins of the hill collapsed. Bang! A golden light rushed out of the hill and rushed into the night sky as fast as lightning. The whole hill, which was hundreds of meters high, suddenly collapsed and became a low mound. Qianshan Zhenwu, Di Jianqing, and the others were attacked by the golden light before they could react. The huge figure in the golden light was the mighty miracle god. Roar! The mighty miracle god roared angrily and stretched out his wide and huge palms, slapping toward the two geniuses. The two geniuses could not dodge and were slapped away on the spot. Bang! Bang! The two geniuses spat out blood and flew thousands of meters away. They crashed into a mountain in the distance, creating two deep pits and several huge ravines on the mountain. After slapping the two geniuses, the mighty miracle god rushed toward Qianshan Zhenwu, Di Jianqing, and Yu Xingfei without hesitation. Only then did the three of them see clearly that there was a huge wound on the back of the mighty miracle god's head and back. White bones were exposed in the deep wounds, which were still dripping with golden blood. However, the mighty miracle god's strength was not reduced at all after suffering such serious injuries. Instead, it was in a state of fury. Di Jianqing had been hit by the thunder light beam and was severely injured. He was charred black all over. After slapping the two geniuses, the mighty miracle god stared at him with its single eye and released a destructive thunder light beam. Kaboom! It's over. My life is over. Di Jianqing broke out in a cold sweat. His eyes were filled with horror and fear. He knew that it was useless to run away. There was no way he could dodge the thunder light beam. He manipulated the Cloud Scar ancient sword and turned it into a huge golden sword to block in front of him. Bang! With a deafening sound, the thunder light beam hit the huge golden sword and sent him and the sword flying. The huge golden sword collapsed on the spot, shattering into countless golden shards. The Cloud Scar ancient sword was sent flying and fell into the ruins. Di Jianqing was turned into charcoal again and slammed into a mountain thousands of meters away. A huge pit was formed in the mountain. Di Jianqing was buried in the ruins and had completely fainted. Although he did not die on the spot after suffering such serious injuries, he was on his last breath. With an injury of this degree, he would need at least half a month to heal before he could regain his fighting strength. The mighty miracle god had gone completely mad. After sending Di Jianqing flying, it charged toward Qianshan Zhenwu and Yu Xingfei ferociously. Chapter 596. Previously, when the mighty miracle god attacked Giant Holy City, the 9 geniuses could not defeat it. Now, only Qianshan Zhenwu and Yu Xingfei were left. How could they be a match for the mighty miracle god? The two of them were chased by the mighty miracle god, so they ran for their lives without feeling ashamed or disgraced. After all, the mighty miracle god was too powerful. The mighty miracle god in its berserk state was even more terrifying. If the two of them did not run for their lives, they would die here. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would definitely be seriously injured and faint like Di Jianqing. The mighty miracle god chased them for 30 miles and seriously injured Qianshan Zhenwu and Yu Xingfei. Qianshan Zhenwu was hit by the lightning beam and was charred like charcoal. He escaped with serious injuries. Yu Xingfei was also beaten up and covered in blood. He was extremely miserable and had to use 2 heavenly origin talismans to escape back to Giant Holy City. The mighty miracle god did not kill them. He turned and flew back in the direction of the abandoned temple. At this time, Ji Tianqing had already entered the ruins and found the ancient tree and the ancient statue in the depths of the ruins. Unfortunately, the tens of thousands of branches of the ancient tree had withered and all the green leaves on the tree had fallen off. The ancient tree, which was full of vitality, had turned into a bare and withered tree. The ancient statue had also been split into two, and numerous cracks had appeared on its surface. Ji Tianqing used his vital essence to condense two giant palms. He lifted the withered tree and the broken statue and placed them on the ruins. The power contained in the ancient tree and the statue is so powerful that even my spiritual sense could not detect it. How could it become a withered tree and the statue be broken? How could this be? There's no way Qian Shan Jinwu and the other four could have unleashed sword lights that were so powerful. Ji Tianqing frowned in confusion and realized that there must be a problem. He tried to use his spiritual sense to detect the broken statue. As a result, he found that the mysterious and powerful power contained in the statue had disappeared. Now, the statue had become very ordinary. It was a stone statue that had been etched by wind and frost for more than 300 years. It could collapse and shatter at any time. He then used his spiritual perception to probe the ancient tree and found that there was a mysterious force inside the ancient tree that was extremely powerful. Furthermore, the mysterious energy seemed to be constantly vibrating and making rhythmic sounds. Bang! 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 Ji Tianqing was no stranger to this deep and rhythmic sound. It was the sound of a heartbeat. The mysterious power of the ancient tree is still there. There is still the sound of a heartbeat. He immediately revealed a trace of joy, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He hurriedly manipulated his spirit sense into the ancient tree and quickly saw that the mysterious power that was emitting the heartbeat was actually a ball of dark golden light. Within the dazzling golden light was a dark golden gem the size of a wash basin. The gem looked like a peach, but it looked more like a heart. The surface of the gemstone was covered with complicated patterns, and there were also some mysterious patterns, which seemed to contain some kind of profound array power. Ji Tianqing quickly condensed his true essence into a giant hand and reached into the withered ancient tree. He took out the golden heart-shaped gem and carefully observed it. Looking at the heart-shaped gem at a close distance, he found that this gem was lifelike, just like a real heart. Not only did the gem vibrate rhythmically with the heartbeat, but it also emitted a majestic vitality. It actually had a powerful vitality. This heart-shaped gem was actually a living thing. At this moment, Ji Tianqing finally understood. No wonder the statue and the ancient tree both contained a mysterious power and were connected to each other. No wonder the ancient tree seemed to have wisdom and life, and it was even emitting heartbeat sounds. It was all because of this heart-shaped gem. After understanding all this, another thought popped up in his mind. This heart-shaped gem was nurtured in the ancient tree and is closely related to the statue. Could it be the thing that the mighty miracle god is looking for? At this moment, the mighty miracle god flew back as fast as lightning. Swoosh! It landed on the ruins from the night sky and stood 300 meters in front of Ji Tianqing. When its feet stepped on the ground within a radius of 10 miles trembled several times, and 2 huge footprints were left on the ground. The mighty miracle god looked down at Ji Tianqing from above. It looked at the withered tree and the broken statue, and then its eyes fell on the heart-shaped gem. Unexpectedly, it didn't attack Ji Tianqing. Its single eye stared at the heart-shaped gem, and its pupils revealed a look of excitement and excitement. Roar! 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 The mighty miracle god bent down and stretched out a pair of huge palms. It slowly stretched out towards Ji Tianqing and issued a strange low roar from its mouth. The voice was somewhat trembling and contained a strong excitement and surprise. Ji Tianqing looked up at the mighty miracle god and saw its palms stretched out. He raised the heart-shaped gem in his hand and said with a solemn expression, "Mighty miracle god, my spiritual sense sensed that you have a mysterious connection with this heart-shaped gem. Your breathing is the same as the heartbeat of this gem. If I'm not wrong, the thing you're looking for should be this gem." The mighty miracle god's palms stretched out in front of Ji Tianqing and then stopped. It stared at Ji Tianqing with its single eye, revealing a look of serious contemplation, as if it was thinking about what Ji Tianqing had said. Ji Tianqing revealed a trace of a smile. He condensed a big hand with true essence and placed the heart-shaped gem in its right palm. The mighty miracle god looked at the heart-shaped gem in its palm and then deeply looked at Ji Tianqing. Suddenly, it bent its right leg and knelt on one knee on the ground. It held the heart-shaped gem in its right hand and covered its heart with its left palm. It bowed its head towards Ji Tianqing and paused for 3 breaths of time. There was no doubt that this was the etiquette of the Cyclops giant clan. It was to express the most sincere gratitude to the other party. After saluting, the mighty miracle god slowly stood up. His right palm surged with a rich golden light, and a majestic power was poured into the heart-shaped gem. Suddenly, the heart-shaped gem the size of a washbasin violently swelled and bloomed with a dazzling golden light. In just a few breaths of time, the heart-shaped gem had swelled to the size of a house. The mysterious patterns on the surface of the dark golden gem were all removed by the mighty miracle god. The gem returned to its original state, turning into a huge golden heart. After that, the mighty miracle god held the golden heart in its right hand and pressed it against its heart. The golden heart bloomed with golden light and slowly merged into its body, drilling into its heart. When the golden heart returned to its original position, the mighty miracle god's body shook. It closed its eyes and silently operated its martial arts. Suddenly, its entire body lit up with dazzling 5-colored spiritual light and rushed up thousands of feet into the sky, illuminating the surrounding dozens of miles of the night sky with incomparable brilliance. Moreover, Ji Tianqing could sense that the power in the mighty miracle god's body was undergoing a drastic change and improvement. It was originally at the peak of sky origin stage 9th level, half a step into the soul refining stage. Chapter 597. Ji Tianqing witnessed the changes in the Juling Shen with his own eyes, as well as the process of it breaking through to the soul refining realm. He immediately understood that the golden heart was originally the Juling Shen's. Previously, the Juling Shen was missing a heart, so it only had the strength of a half-step soul refining realm, and it was still searching everywhere for its heart. Now that its heart had returned to its original position, it broke through the shackles and reached the soul refining realm. Moreover, Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that the Juling Shen's aura was powerful and majestic, and there was also a thick berserk aura. Now, the Juling Shen's aura had become even more powerful and majestic, but there was no longer any berserk aura. It seemed incomparably sacred and majestic, like a real god. Although Ji Tianqing wanted to know why the Juling Shen lost its heart. Why was its heart hidden in the ancient tree of the abandoned temple? What was the story behind this? What had it experienced? But unfortunately, he and the Juling Shen did not speak the same language, so they were unable to communicate. After a while, the Juling Shen finished breaking through and opened its golden eye. Its entire body surged with multicolored light, rushing into the night sky, spreading in all directions, sprinkling on the surrounding mountain peaks and the earth. Suddenly, a magical scene appeared. In the surrounding barren mountain peaks, on the barren earth, patches of green grass and trees immediately appeared. The grass and saplings on the ground grew at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into lush forests and grasslands. After a short 100 breaths of time, the surrounding mountain peaks were covered by green grass and forests. The mountains and rivers within a radius of dozens of miles were restored to vitality and greenery, and there were even streams and waterfalls in the mountains, just like a beautiful scene. Such a magical scene was simply like a miracle. Ji Tianqing was full of shock and yearning, thinking to himself, could it be that this is the strength and means of a soul-refining realm powerhouse? At this time, the Juling Shen lowered its head and looked at him, extending its right hand to him, and its single eye revealed a friendly look. Ji Tianqing vaguely understood its meaning, and flew to its palm and stood still. Then, the Juling Shen placed him on its left shoulder, bringing him into the sky, and flew in the direction of the Juling city. After the two of them left, two candidates covered in blood quietly crawled out of one of the mountains that had a crack on them. They looked rather pathetic. These two were the heaven's prides who had been following Qianshan Jinwu. Just now, they had been sent flying by Julingshan's palm. They had been seriously injured and had smashed into the mountain peak. So, they had pretended to be dead and didn't show up. The scene of Ji Tianqing taking out the golden heart and returning it to Julingshan was clearly seen by the two of them. The two of them were extremely shocked, and their emotions were very complicated. However, they hid in the mountain peak and did not dare to show their faces. At this time, they waited for Ji Tianqing and Julingshan to go far away before they dared to come out. The two of them stood on a grassland and looked at the figures of Julingshan and Ji Tianqing as they left. Their faces were filled with envy and jealousy. I really didn't expect that Ji Tianqing would have such a fortuitous encounter. He found what the mighty miracle god was looking for and even received the gratitude of the mighty miracle god. Maybe we were wrong from the beginning. The crisis of Giant Holy City can't be resolved by killing. We were beaten so miserably by the mighty miracle god, but Ji Tianqing can become friends with the mighty miracle god. It seems that this crisis will be resolved. Ji Tianqing will become the biggest hero, alas. Thinking of this, the two of them were a little nervous. If the crisis of Giant Holy City was resolved, this assessment would be over. Based on their performance these days, could they pass the assessment of the Imperial Court? The two of them were a little depressed. They had a premonition of a bad ending. The mighty miracle god was flying back to Giant Holy City with Ji Tianqing. Along the way, the mighty miracle god would spray out an overwhelming cyan streamer when they flew over the barren mountains and rivers. The endless cyan light, which contained the majestic vitality of the green wood, fell on the barren mountains and barren land. Immediately, patches of grass and trees grew. The grass and saplings grew rapidly. In just a few dozen breaths, they grew into grasslands and forests, covering the barren mountains and earth with thick green. Wherever the mighty miracle god flew over, the barren mountains and rivers were restored to their original state. The mountains and rivers became beautiful and full of spiritual energy. Half an hour later, when the mighty miracle god and Ji Tianqing flew back to Giant Holy City, the dark brown wilderness outside the city had become a green grassland. The city was still noisy and boiling. Hundreds of thousands of people were still in a state of panic and fear. Duanmu Yulong, the three princes, Qianshan Jinwu, Yu Jingfei, and others were all resisting their injuries. They were busy comforting the people in the city and cleaning up the ruins in the North City district. Suddenly, many people saw the mighty miracle god fly to the top of the city and stand in the air. Many people were scared out of their wits. They screamed in horror and despair and fled in panic. Duanmu Yulong, Qianshan Jinwu, and others' faces turned ugly. Their eyes were filled with grief and helplessness. Damn it! Why is the mighty miracle god back? The 10 contestants are seriously injured. Now we are at the end of our rope. How can we stop the mighty miracle god's attack? It's over. The giant holy city can't be saved. The city is going to be destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of people are going to die. I'm afraid we will die here too. Just when the elites were in despair, Qianshan Jinwu suddenly saw a person standing on the left shoulder of the mighty miracle god. The figure was tall and straight. He was wearing a white robe and a golden cloak. He looked very handsome and mighty. Qianshan Jinwu took a closer look and recognized that the extraordinary young man was Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing. He is standing with the mighty miracle god. Qianshan Jinwu was stunned and exclaimed in disbelief. Duanmu Yulong and the other martial emperor's sons were dumbfounded when they saw Ji Tianqing's figure. What's going on? Why is Ji Tianqing in cahoots with the mighty miracle god? Is he going to destroy the giant holy city? Despicable bastard. No wonder he has been sneaking around before. No. If he has pledged allegiance to the mighty miracle god, he will not be able to pass the assessment. He will even be punished by the imperial court. Everyone was puzzled and did not understand what was going on. At this moment, the mighty miracle god waved his giant palms and shot out a colorful stream of light. Swoosh! 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 The five-colored brilliance that blotted out the sky enveloped the giant holy city within a radius of 100 miles. It was like a five-colored light curtain. As the colorful light shone on the city, the giant holy city immediately underwent a huge change. The broken ground began to heal, the deep pits were automatically filled, and the collapsed houses were quickly restored. All the destroyed houses and buildings were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. The colorful light also contained a powerful soul-calming power. When it shone on the hundreds of thousands of people, the people immediately calmed down. Everyone was no longer frightened and no longer fled in a panic. They had also received the order from the mighty miracle god. They stopped and looked up at the mighty miracle god and Ji Tianqing in the sky. They all showed a pious expression and knelt down to worship. The mighty miracle god. Our guardian angel has returned. Chapter 598. Hundreds of thousands of people in giant holy city prostrated themselves in worship to Ji Tianqing and Julingshan. The people shouted in unison, like rolling thunder resounding through the sky, shaking the entire giant holy city. The people regarded Julingshan as their guardian and Ji Tianqing as their savior to thank and worship. Everyone's expression and eyes revealed piety and fanaticism. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the rest were petrified and dumbfounded when they saw the scene of hundreds of thousands of people prostrating themselves in worship. Everyone was completely dumbfounded, not knowing what was going on. Giant holy city, which was on the verge of destruction, returned to normal in the blink of an eye. How could this be? Why? What did Ji Tianqing do? Why is he called a savior by the people? This is impossible. We risked our lives to protect giant holy city, but the people in the city are worshipping Ji Tianqing. There is a problem. There must be a problem. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the rest could not accept this result. Especially Duanmu Yulong, who was the most angry and unwilling. At this moment, Julingshan waved his hand, making the people in the city quiet down. He used his left hand to hold Ji Tianqing in front of him and slowly raised his right hand to remove the golden eye on his forehead. The huge golden eye immediately shrunk countless times and turned into a dark golden eyeball. Then, Julingshan controlled the dark golden eyeball to fly to Ji Tianqing and drill into his forehead. In the blink of an eye, the dark golden eyeball fused with Ji Tianqing and became his third eye. There is a blue eyeball in the golden eye, which is filled with flickering blue lightning. Obviously, it contains powerful thunder power. This is not an ordinary third eye, but Julingshan's thunder spirit eye. In order to thank Ji Tianqing, Julingshan actually gave the thunder spirit eye to Ji Tianqing. When Ji Tianqing successfully fused with the thunder spirit eye, Julingshan revealed a satisfied smile. The hundreds of thousands of people in the city also cheered excitedly. Savior. Hero. Savior. Protector's friend, revered savior, we are forever grateful to you. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others were shocked speechless. They were petrified. They stared dumbfoundedly at Ji Tianqing. Looking at his newly acquired thunder spirit eyes, they were so jealous that they almost went crazy. The prodigies knew very well how powerful the thunder spirit eyes were. After all, they had all been blasted into a miserable state by the lightning beam. And now, Julingshan had given the thunder spirit eyes to Ji Tianqing. Why? This is impossible. Why should I give him the thunder spirit eyes? Ji Tianqing clearly didn't do anything. What right does he have to be the savior of the world and receive the thunder spirit eyes? Ah! This isn't true, I don't believe it. Duanmu Yulong and the other geniuses were both confused and enraged. They all let out unsatisfied growls. However, everything was over. Shwa! In the gloomy sky, a dazzling white light suddenly flashed across and formed a huge teleportation portal, which was suspended above Giant Holy City. Julingshan in the sky and the hundreds of thousands of people in the city suddenly became motionless like stone statues. Except for Ji Tianqing and the other prodigies who could still move normally, Giant Holy City seemed to have stopped the flow of time. The scene was completely frozen. At the same time, a powerful and majestic voice rang out from the huge teleportation portal. Candidates, the second round of the examination is over. You should leave now. Everyone immediately recognized that it was the voice of the imperial tutor. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others looked at the motionless giant holy city below and the teleportation portal in the sky. They suddenly realized something. It turned out that this world was an illusory world created by the imperial court with the array formation. Ji Tianqing took the lead and flew high into the sky. He stepped into the teleportation portal and left this world. After that, Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others came to their senses and stepped into the teleportation portal with unwillingness and anger. In the square at the foot of sky-reaching peak, tens of thousands of people were still immersed in shock. Everyone stared at the huge light shield on the high platform and watched the scene on the light shield gradually disappear. They gradually came to their senses. After that, everyone cheered excitedly, shouted and discussed fiercely. This is incredible. That Julingshan is really like a deity. Ji Tianqing is too miraculous, too powerful. At the beginning, he was the most inconspicuous. Who would have thought that he would become the savior of Giant Holy City? Ha, 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 what happened in just a few days is like the most realistic story. It's really enjoyable to watch. Before the examination began, I thought Ji Tianqing would definitely be eliminated. I didn't expect him to hide so deeply. Not only is he powerful, but he is also very thoughtful and meticulous. Ji Tianqing's performance is too perfect. He has far surpassed all the other candidates. There is no doubt about that. I admire Ji Tianqing so much. He is handsome, powerful, calm and wise, brave and resourceful. He is simply a perfect man. I really want to marry him. I really didn't expect that those geniuses, who are so famous and powerful, also have such an unsightly side. I really look down on them. Yes, the two most powerful geniuses only care about fighting for power and trying to show off. A few mediocre geniuses, who have no ability to rule and govern, and who are also afraid of death. The imperial court's examination method is simply wonderful. It's real and fair, and it allows everyone to supervise and judge together. It's very enjoyable to watch. It was obvious that the actions of the 10 contestants in the past few days were presented in the light shield on the high platform like a movie. Tens of thousands of people clearly watched the whole process of the examination. They were very shocked and excited. Moreover, after watching the performance of the 10 candidates, everyone had their own opinions and judgments in their hearts. Almost everyone agreed that Ji Tianqing's performance was perfect and impeccable. He was really the savior of Giant Holy City. As for the performance of the other 9 geniuses, it seemed to be lackluster. There were not many shining points. The crowd was still cheering and discussing excitedly. Countless voices converged into a mighty sound wave torrent, shaking the entire square. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Yan Qian Yu, and the others in the crowd were also very excited and cheering. In the past few days, they had been staring at the picture on the light screen and had been paying attention to Ji Tianqing. When Ji Tianqing performed well, they were all excited and cheered for Ji Tianqing. When Ji Tianqing encountered difficulties and was suppressed by other geniuses, they prayed and worried for Ji Tianqing silently. Fortunately, the second round of the examination was finally over. Ji Tianqing lived up to everyone's expectations and became the most dazzling and perfect one among the 10 geniuses. Everyone had been worried about him for several days. Now, they could finally rest assured. Yun Yao, who was like an ice fairy, showed a rare smile. Her eyes were full of gratification. She murmured silently, "Tianqing, you are really the most outstanding. No matter how outstanding the geniuses are, you are the most dazzling one." Ji Ku and Yen were jumping excitedly, waving their arms and cheering for Ji Tianqing. "Brother Tianqing, you are so great. I knew you would always be the best. You are the savior of giant holy city. Senior brother Tianqing is so handsome that he has broken through the heavens. Even the giant Holy Spirit has to kneel down to salute him and give him a divine eye. This is a supreme honor." Qian Yu also smiled and squinted her eyes. She said proudly, "I have said it before. With the means of our elder Ji, he can easily crush those 9 so-called geniuses." Chapter 599. In the square at the foot of the mountain, the people discussed heatedly for a long time before they gradually calmed down. The imperial tutor and Long Yunxiao stood on the high platform and looked at the ancient stone gate calmly. They were waiting for the 10 sovereigns to return. The tens of thousands of people gradually stopped talking and looked at the towering stone gate. After a while, a white light flashed from the stone gate and a handsome figure appeared out of thin air. The sovereign who walked out of the stone gate first was wearing a white robe and a golden battle robe. He was Ji Tianqing, the savior of the world. When he stepped over the stone gate and returned to the high platform, the tens of thousands of people in the square couldn't help but cheer and shout. "Ji Tianqing! This is incredible! You're the best! Whichever city has a city governor like you will be the happiest and most stable city. Ji Tianqing. Whether you can become the city governor of the Tianshan region or not, you will be famous in the central region from now on." Before the start of the assessment, most of the people in the square didn't think Ji Tianqing was going to win. They were gloating over his misfortune. At this moment, when they saw Ji Tianqing's performance, they had a whole new level of respect for him. Many of the people in the square were weak. They all hoped that their cities could have a city governor like Ji Tianqing. Of course, they admired and supported him very much. Ji Tianqing stood on the high platform and looked at the enthusiastic and excited people in the square. He couldn't help but smile. He knew that what he had done in Giant Holy City had won the hearts of many people. Then, several white lights flashed from the ancient stone gate. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, Yu Zhengfei and the others walked out of the stone gate and returned to the high platform. They were a little depressed. When they saw the people in the square talking and cheering, they felt even more depressed. However, they had to take care of their image and demeanor. They couldn't show any resentment or jealousy. They stood side by side with Ji Tianqing on the high platform and waited for the imperial tutor to announce the results of the assessment. However, after waiting for a long time, there were only 9 contestants on the high platform. There was still one person who hadn't appeared. The imperial tutor frowned and asked in a dignified tone, "What's going on? Where's the other contestant?" Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others were silent. Long Yunxiao said expressionlessly, 9 of the 10 contestants are here. Only Di Jianqing has not appeared. I remember that he was beaten by the mighty. Hearing this, the people in the square began to whisper to each other. Some people even laughed softly. The imperial preceptor's eyebrows knitted together, revealing a look of disappointment. However, he didn't say anything. With a wave of his hand, he executed a formation and sent it into the ancient stone door. After a while, a figure wrapped in colorful spiritual light flew out of the stone door and landed on the high platform. Everyone immediately saw that the figure was Di Jianqing. His body was charred like charcoal and he was still in a coma. "Take him away for treatment," the imperial tutor ordered in a dignified tone. Immediately, two imperial guards came over and took the unconscious Di Jianqing away. Then, the imperial tutor looked around and said in a loud voice, "Everyone, the second round of the assessment is over. The giant holy city you see is only an illusory world created by the imperial tutor. Everything is fake." However, everyone has seen the performance of the 10 contestants when the giant holy city was facing a crisis. The purpose of this battle for the position of Heavenly Stellar Region Lord was to select a wise and virtuous ruler for the Heavenly Stellar Region. As a leader, not only must you have strength and strategy, but you must also be bold, careful, flexible, and put the safety of the people first. When the territory and people under your jurisdiction are in a crisis, you must have enough responsibility and ability to solve the problem as soon as possible. This is a qualified leader. Because of this, we have adopted this method for the second round of the assessment. The imperial tutor spoke loudly about the meaning and purpose of the second round of the assessment. Nearly 10,000 people and warriors in the square nodded in agreement. Except for Ji Tianqing, the other contestants were a little nervous. They were silently guessing the result of the assessment. Who would pass? The imperial tutor continued, "In this round of the assessment, Ji Tianqing's performance was the most outstanding. He was brave, resourceful, bold, and careful. Therefore, he could find the abnormality of the Julingshen, investigate the clues of the abandoned temple, and finally help the Julingshen find the lost heart and save the giant holy city." There is no doubt that Ji Tianqing passed the assessment perfectly and received the Thunderbolt spiritual eyes from the Julingshen. That is a hidden reward specially set by the imperial tutor. Only the person who really solves the root of the problem can receive this reward. Hearing this, countless commoners began to discuss with envious expressions. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others became more and more jealous and depressed. They looked at Ji Tianqing with hostility. However, Ji Tianqing looked indifferent. His face was as calm as usual. He only glanced at them with the Thunderbolt spiritual eyes on his forehead. The golden eyes and the blue pupils were flashing with streaks of lightning. They were as majestic as the eyes of a god. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others had been struck by the lightning released by the Thunderbolt spiritual eyes. Now, they still had lingering fears when they saw the lightning. They hated Ji Tianqing even more. At this time, the imperial tutor announced loudly, "Before this round of the assessment, I have already said that 5 people will be eliminated in this round of the assessment. In addition to Ji Tianqing, the other 4 people who passed the assessment were Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, Yu Jingfei, and Di Jianqing. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Jingfei are strong in governing and planning. They are calm in the face of danger and can take charge of the overall situation. Di Jianqing's performance is also commendable. Although he didn't find any deeper clues, he is bold and careful." When the people in the square heard the imperial tutor's announcement, there was a burst of discussion. Since 5 out of the 10 participants are eliminated, then Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others will definitely pass the assessment. Other than Ji Tianqing, no one expected this. The other 4 aren't surprising. After all, they are very strong. The 4 who passed the assessment are very ordinary. They can't be compared to Ji Tianqing at all. How good would it be if 9 people were eliminated in this assessment? Ji Tianqing will definitely be the Tianqin Zone Lord. After all, this is only the second round of the assessment and not the final one. This result is more reasonable. The expressions of the 8 contestants also changed subtly. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Jingfei let out a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Chapter 600. The tens of thousands of people and martial artists in the square were still talking about it. The 5 eliminated geniuses could only dejectedly leave and walk down the high platform. Then, the imperial tutor announced loudly, "The 5 participants who passed the second round of assessment, please rest and recuperate as soon as possible. Tomorrow morning, the Imperial Court will hold the third round of assessment here. The 5 of you will fight in the arena. This is the last round of the assessment. 4 people will be eliminated, and the final winner will become the Tianqian region lord. When the Imperial Preceptor's voice fell, many people burst into excited cheers. Ji Tianqing, Qianshan Jinwu, and the others also looked expectant and confident. After the Imperial Tutor announced the news, he left the square with Long Yunxiao and returned to the Imperial Court at the top of the mountain. The tens of thousands of people and martial artists in the square were still waiting. No one was willing to leave. Everyone knew that tomorrow would be the most exciting day. The 5 geniuses would fight in public to determine the winner. Who would become the Tianqian region lord would be revealed tomorrow. Ji Tianqing, Qianshan Jinwu, and the others left the stage. They immediately took the time to recuperate. Ji Tianqing had just returned to Yunyao and Ji Ku when he was surrounded by them. Yunyao, Ji Ku, and Yan all congratulated him excitedly and expressed the excitement in their hearts. Even Kun Wu and Ling Yichen came over and greeted Ji Tianqing and congratulated him. Ji Tianqing chatted with the crowd for a while, then left the square and found a mountain nearby. He found a cave in the mountain and set up a simple array. Then, he sat on a millstone and began to cultivate. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others were seriously injured and had used up a lot of energy. They would not be able to recover in a short day. However, he was only slightly injured. With the powerful self-healing ability of the Kenshin bloodline, he could recover without the need to cultivate. He cultivated for 4 hours. His cultivation and physical strength had completely recovered. His strength had returned to its peak state. Then, he began to study the third eye on his forehead, the Thunder Spirit Eye. Even though he knew that this lightning spiritual eye was a reward set up by the Imperial Court, there shouldn't be any problems. However, he had yet to use the Thunder Spirit Pupil after obtaining it, so he had to study it carefully before he could use it freely. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Jingfei are all very strong. Especially Qianshan Jinwu, who is 4 levels higher than me. It's almost impossible for me to defeat him. The power of the lightning spirit eyes is also very strong. If I can use it properly, I will definitely be able to greatly increase my battle prowess. Perhaps, I will have a chance to defeat my opponent. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing tried to control the thunderbolt spirit eyes on his forehead. The thunder spirit eyes had already fused with his body and became a part of him, so of course he could control it smoothly. After several attempts, he finally managed to hide the lightning spirit eyes. His forehead returned to normal, and no one could see any abnormalities. With just a thought, the thunder spirit pupil would appear. When he did not need to use it, he could hide the spirit pupil. This is pretty good. If I can't hide the spirit pupil, it will feel weird to go out with 3 eyes, Ji Tianqing muttered to himself as he tried to control the lightning energy in the spirit pupil. After studying it for an hour, he realized that there was not much lightning energy in the spirit pupil. It could only release a lightning beam. The most amazing thing about the lightning spirit pupil was that it could communicate with the lightning energy in the world and gather it in the spirit pupil to condense it into a lightning beam. After Ji Tianqing understood the lightning spirit pupil, he tried to activate the lightning energy. He released a blue lightning beam and blasted it toward the cave wall. Suddenly, a lightning beam as thick as a water bucket shot out and blasted the dark brown cave wall. Kaboom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the cave collapsed. The entire mountain shook violently, and countless wide gullies appeared on the ground. The interior of the mountain was filled with blue lightning and electric arcs, burning the collapsed dust and rocks into black scorched earth. Ji Tianqing had already flown out of the cave and was standing in the sky above the mountain. Looking at the crumbling mountain peak below, he couldn't help but frown as he thought to himself, the power of the thunderbolt spiritual eyes is indeed extraordinary. However, the lightning energy stored in the spirit pupil was used up in one shot. Moreover, the power of this lightning beam is much weaker than the one released by the mighty miracle god. It seems that the power of the lightning released by the spirit pupil is related to my cultivation. When I reach the 9th level of the sky origin realm, I will be as strong as the mighty miracle god and be able to destroy a mountain with a lightning beam. Ji Tianqing knew what to do and returned to the mountain peak. He activated the power of the lightning spirit pupil to absorb the lightning energy in the world and store it in the spirit pupil. In a short 6 hours, all the lightning energy within 100 miles had been absorbed by him. Only then did he end his cultivation. The spirit pupil could only store so much lightning energy. Once he released the lightning beam, the lightning energy would be used up in one shot. Therefore, he could only use the lightning spirit pupil as his trump card at the critical moment. For the rest of the night, he cultivated on the mountain peak and improved his strength silently. A new day came after the night had passed. When the sun rose, Ji Tianqing left the mountain peak and returned to the square at the foot of the sky-reaching peak. Yin Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were cheering for him and praying for him to win today. After all, the winner of the Sky Star Territory Lord would be decided in the arena today. After a while, Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, Yu Jingfei, and Di Jianqing arrived at the square one after another. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Jingfei's injuries were light. After a day of recuperation, they seemed to be fine. Di Jianqing's injuries were the most serious. Even after a day of recuperation, he had only recovered 20 to 30%. He was still riddled with injuries and looked weak. He only had 40 to 50% of his combat strength at his peak. The people in the square observed Ji Tianqing, Di Jianqing, and the others and began to whisper to each other. We will see the results today. I wonder who will become the Sky Star Territory Lord. I'm really looking forward to it. In my opinion, Qianshan Jinwu is the most powerful among the 5. He has the best chance of becoming the Sky Star Territory Lord. After all, Duanmu Yulong is the emperor's son of an aristocratic family. He must have many trump cards. He has a high chance of winning. It's a pity that the arena competition will test one's true strength. Even though Ji Tianqing's performance was outstanding, I'm afraid he will be eliminated today. Ji Tianqing's strength is 4 to 5 realms lower than Qianshan Jinwu and Duanmu Yulong. He will never win. Chapter 601. While the crowd was discussing, 2 streaks of light flew down from the mountain peak. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 2 streaks of light landed on the high platform, revealing 2 figures. They were the imperial tutor and the son of heaven, Long Yunxiao. The crowd quieted down and stared at the imperial tutor on the stage. The imperial tutor glanced at the crowd and saw that Ji Tianqing, Qianshan Jinwu, and the other contestants were all present. He announced loudly, there are 5 contestants in today's competition. I will use the method of drawing lots to pick out 2 participants at a time. They will fight in the arena in front of everyone. The winner will advance and the loser will be eliminated. The imperial tutor announced the rules of the competition. He waved his hand and 5 streaks of golden light floated in the sky. There was a token in each of the streaks of golden light, which corresponded to the names of the 5 contestants. The imperial tutor waved his hand, and the 5 streaks of golden light danced in the air, messing up the order of the tokens. Son of Heaven, please draw lots for the 5 contestants. Long Yunxiao did not hesitate. He stretched out his hands and took out 2 streaks of golden light and handed them to the imperial tutor. The imperial tutor opened the golden light and took out the tokens inside. He announced loudly, the first round, Ji Tianqing vs. Di Jianqing. The crowd began to discuss after hearing the result. Di Jianqing's face was solemn and worried. But when he heard that his opponent was Ji Tianqing, he relaxed a lot. He turned his head and glanced at Ji Tianqing. A cold smile flashed in his eyes as he thought to himself, with my current condition, I will definitely lose. There is no way I can defeat Qian Shanjinwu and Duanmu Yulong. However, if I defeat Ji Tianqing first and then lose to those two guys, it won't be too bad. Qian Shanjinwu and Duanmu Yulong obviously had the same idea. They both revealed a playful look. However, Ji Tianqing's expression didn't change at all. At this time, Long Yunxiao took 2 more golden lights from the sky and handed them to the imperial tutor. The imperial tutor opened the golden light and took out 2 tokens. He announced loudly, the second round, Qian Shanjinwu vs Yu Zhengfei. In this round, Duanmu Yulong will not need to fight and will directly advance to the next round. As he finished talking, people started to talk about whether Yu Zhengfei could defeat Qian Shanjinwu, who was at the 7th level of Sky Origin stage. Qian Shanjinwu and Yu Zhengfei looked at each other. Yu Zhengfei's eyes were gloomy and solemn, as if he was facing a great enemy. Qian Shanjinwu's eyes were full of confidence, with a hint of a smile. And the person who was in the best mood was naturally Duanmu Yulong. That was because he was lucky enough to get a bye. He didn't need to fight at all to advance. In this way, not only could he conserve his energy and hide his trump card, he could also take the opportunity to heal his injuries and restore his power. After the Imperial Preceptor announced the results of the drawing of lots, he activated the defensive formation on the high platform, using a huge dark yellow light shield to protect the entire high platform. This defensive array was extremely powerful. It was impossible for a Sky Origin stage cultivator to destroy it. The aftermath of the battle wouldn't spread out, so it wouldn't hurt the people in the square. I announced the start of the first round. As the Imperial Tutor finished talking, Di Jianqing stepped onto the stage first. Swoosh! He flashed and flew onto the stage with his ancient sword on his back. He crossed his arms and looked confident and powerful. He looked down at Ji Tianqing, who was below the stage, with a mocking sneer on his face. Apparently, he didn't take Ji Tianqing seriously at all. He thought he was going to win for sure. Many people thought the same. They all believed that Ji Tianqing would be defeated by Di Jianqing. The crowd started to talk again. Ji Tianqing's silhouette flashed and flew into the ring, standing 50 meters away from Di Jianqing. His expression was indifferent as he stood on the stage, his gaze calm as he looked at Di Jianqing. Di Jianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a sneer, Ji Tianqing, I didn't expect you and I would be opponents. I don't know whether you are unlucky or I am lucky enough. Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly. Di Jianqing, if you are smart enough, you should beg for mercy from me now. I don't want to beat you too badly. I don't want you to lose face. Hearing this, Di Jianqing's expression changed drastically. He opened his eyes with anger and coldness. Ji Tianqing, you are too arrogant. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Those fools in Giant Holy City just called you a savior a few times. Do you really think that you're a savior? I think you are still living in a dream. You are only at Sky Origin stage. How can you defeat me? You will lose for sure. Ji Tianqing was not angry. Instead, he looked at him with pity. He shook his head and sighed, disaster is coming, but you don't know it. You still want to show off in front of everyone, you really make me feel sorry for you. The people under the stage were all shocked. They looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. They exclaimed and discussed. Nobody expected Ji Tianqing to be so confident when facing Di Jianqing, who was only at Sky Origin stage 5th level. Di Jianqing was so angry that his face turned green. His chest was filled with anger. His body was filled with a strong desire to fight. Ji Tianqing, no matter how eloquent you are, it is useless. I will show you the marvelous sword art of the sword faction in the Green Crane Valley. I will let you know that even if I am severely injured, I can still defeat you easily. While talking, Di Jianqing made a sword spell with both hands and performed a secret sword art. The cloud scar ancient sword on his back flew up to the sky. It shone with 5 colors and turned into a huge 5-colored sword that was 10 meters long. One sword to startle the heavens. Di Jianqing suddenly let out a low roar and controlled the huge 5-colored sword to descend from the sky towards Ji Tianqing. The power of this sword was fierce and domineering. It was as if it could split the sky and the earth. The thousands of people around the stage opened their eyes wide. They stared at the huge 5-colored sword with anticipation. Everyone wanted to see if Ji Tianqing, who was so confident, could block Di Jianqing's marvelous sword technique. Ji Tianqing was still calm and unruffled. He looked at Di Jianqing with an expressionless face and said, "Your so-called marvelous sword art is nothing but a joke in front of me. You're just asking to be humiliated." As he spoke, a black sword appeared in his left hand. It was the Black Dragon sword. He held the sword hilt with his right hand and pulled it out instantly. He unleashed a powerful aura and slashed at the huge 5-colored sword in the sky. Dragon soars from the 9 heavens. When the Black Dragon sword was unsheathed, a loud dragon roar burst out. It echoed for dozens of miles. A 30-meter-long frost divine dragon suddenly appeared. It extended its claws and fangs. It unleashed a destructive aura and clashed with Di Jianqing's cloud scar ancient sword. Boom! The frost divine dragon and the huge 5-colored sword collided. A deafening sound was heard. At that moment, the entire square was shaking, and the sound waves stirred up layers of ripples in the sky. Chapter 602. The 5-colored giant sword was destroyed, and the cloud scar ancient sword was also blown away. It crashed into the yellow light barrier at the edge of the platform. The light barrier formed by the defensive formation was very strong. It was not damaged at all, and the cloud scar ancient sword fell to the ground. Di Jianqing's expression changed. His eyes were filled with shock. He couldn't believe that with Ji Tianqing's strength and cultivation base, he could execute such a magnificent and shocking sword strike. He had always been proud of his wondrous swordsmanship, but at this moment, when compared to Ji Tianqing, he was completely inferior and appeared ordinary. Before Di Jianqing could react, Ji Tianqing had already performed the second sword skill. Metal Slash. He held the Black Dragon sword with both hands and activated all of his power. He slashed out a giant golden sword that was 40 meters long. The giant golden sword, carrying an incomparably sharp and fierce aura, slashed down from the sky with a force that could split the heavens and earth apart, slashing towards Di Jianqing with a loud bang. At that moment, the giant golden sword was as bright as the sun. It lit up the entire square. This was the first time Ji Tianqing had performed the 5 secret skills of Tianqing. Its power was far more powerful than the 5 sword skills of the Flying Star sword technique. Di Jianqing's aura was locked down by the giant golden sword. He had nowhere to run. His eyes were filled with shock. Ji Tianqing's strength has reached such a level. How can he perform such a terrifying sword skill? The Cloud Scar ancient sword had already been blown away. At this critical moment, he could only use the remaining True Yuan in his body to form a dark yellow True Yuan shield. He also took out a black ink slab. This heaven origin spiritual treasure was used to block the power of the metal slash. After he injected True Yuan into the black ink slab, it immediately expanded to a radius of 5 meters. It blocked the top of his head. Almost at the same time, the metal emperor slash, with the power to destroy everything, struck the ancient inkstone with a loud bang. Boom! Crack! Amidst the deafening noise, there was a clear cracking sound. That simple and unadorned pitch-black inkstone was split into 2 on the spot and flew out in 2 different directions. The metal slash only paused for a moment. Its power was weakened by about 30%. It hit Di Jianqing and drowned him. Boom! The metal slash hit the ground, creating a 100-meter-long trench on the green stone floor. Dust and gravel flew everywhere. Di Jianqing was smashed into the huge trench. He was lying in the rubble with blood all over his body. He had already passed out. Countless pieces of rubble buried him, causing him to end up in an even more miserable state. The platform was almost cut in half by the sword. The entire square was shaking violently. Fortunately, the high platform was built with the hardest lapis lazuli, and a powerful defensive array was set up, so it did not collapse on the spot. Otherwise, the metal slash. After a while, the golden light finally disappeared. Ji Tianqing put away the black dragon sword. He stood on the platform calmly. He had a carefree look on his face, as if the sword strike that destroyed the heavens and earth was just a casual move. Everyone was stunned. They looked at him in disbelief. It took them a long time to come back to their senses. No one could believe that Ji Tianqing, who was at Sky Origin Stage Level 3, defeated Di Jianqing, who was at Sky Origin Stage Level 5, with only 2 moves. Di Jianqing was the prime disciple of the sword faction. He was a true master of the sword. How could he lose so miserably? After the tens of thousands of citizens regained their senses, they immediately erupted into earth-shattering shouts and discussions. Many commoners and martial artists looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of shock and admiration. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Zhengfei were also stunned. Their faces turned pale. The 3 of them thought that even though Di Jianqing was severely injured, he could still defeat Ji Tianqing. After all, there was a difference of 2 to 3 levels between Sky Origin Stage cultivators. They were not ordinary Sky Origin Stage cultivators. They were all famous talents in the Central Plains. Under such circumstances, Ji Tianqing could never defeat Di Jianqing. However, he did it. And he did it so easily. He crushed Di Jianqing in an overbearing and invincible manner. Qianshan Jinwu and Duanmu Yulong sensed the danger. They stopped underestimating Ji Tianqing and decided to treat him with caution. After 100 breaths, the imperial tutor announced the result of the competition. Ji Tianqing wins the first round. Di Jianqing is eliminated. After he announced the result, several golden armor imperials jumped into the ditch. They dug out the unconscious Di Jianqing from the debris and carried him off the platform. Countless people saw Di Jianqing's miserable appearance. They all burst into laughter and discussions. Poor Di Jianqing. In the giant holy city, he was severely injured by the giant holy god and fainted. Now, under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, he was struck into the ground by Ji Tianqing's sword and fainted again. Today was definitely the most humiliating day in his life. He had lost all the face he could in his life. Then, the imperial preceptor used the power of the formation and quickly flattened the wide gully on the high platform. When the platform was restored, he announced loudly, "The second round is between Qianshan Jinwu and Yu Zhengfei." Qianshan Jinwu jumped onto the platform first. He held a golden heavy sword in his hand. His body was exuding a violent fighting spirit and an overbearing aura. Yu Zhengfei followed closely behind him. He flew onto the platform and stood facing Qianshan Jinwu from 100 meters away. Qianshan Jinwu silently activated the vital core in his body. He kept accumulating his aura and power. He looked at Yu Zhengfei and said confidently, "Brother Yu, please excuse me." Yu Zhengfei looked solemn and said in a low voice, "We are competing on the same platform. The winner is the king. What is there to be offended? Brother Qianshan, it is a great fortune to be able to fight with you. Today, I will do my best." Qianshan Jinwu also nodded solemnly and said, "Very good. I will definitely not underestimate you. I will definitely bring out my true abilities and have a good fight with you." For powerful cultivators, fighting with all their strength was a way to respect each other. Yu Zhengfei was wearing a dragon-patterned armor. He held the coiling dragon spear with both hands. His fighting spirit surged and condensed into dark red flames. Brother Qian Shan, take this. When Yu Zhengfei's true essence accumulated to its peak, he let out a low roar and took the initiative to attack. 10 Ultimate Berserker Spear. He leaped into the air, reaching a height of 100 meters. Gripping the coiling dragon spear with both hands, he thrust out 10 huge dark red spear shadows with all his strength. Each spear shadow was 20 meters long. They were formed by terrifying flames and contained the power to destroy everything. The entire platform became incomparably hot, and even the air was distorted by the flames. 10 violent and overbearing spear shadows fell from the sky and enveloped Qianshan Jinwu's figure, leaving him nowhere to hide. However, Qianshan Jinwu had no intention of dodging. He waved his heavy sword and slashed out 5 fire divine dragons to meet Yu Zhengfei head-on. Fire 5 Dragons Slash. Both of their cultivation techniques had a ferocious and domineering characteristic. What they used was the power of fire. Such a head-on clash between two powerful forces instantly caused the eyes of the commoners in the square to widen. Their hearts were also in their throats. Bang, bang, bang. The 5 fire divine dragons flew into the sky and collided with the 10 dark red spears. There was a deafening sound. Chapter 603. The earth-shattering noise and the fire that filled the entire platform didn't disappear until a long time later. When the flames in the sky dissipated, everyone saw that Yu Zhengfei and Qianshan Jinwu were fighting fiercely in the arena. Qianshan Jinwu wasn't hurt at all. He looked normal and his qi was still violent. There was a wound on Yu Zhengfei's chest. There was blood on the corner of his mouth. Apparently, he was slightly injured in the fight. However, he was an experienced warrior. Such a small injury wouldn't affect his combat effectiveness. It would only make him more violent. He dashed forward, wielding the coiling dragon spear with all of his strength. He continuously performed one destructive spear skill after another. Qianshan Jinwu was also doing his best. He wielded his golden sword and fought against Yu Zhengfei. He kept slashing out sword lights that could break the world. The fight soon reached the most intense level. Both of them burst out their strongest power and used their most powerful secret skills. The spear shadows and the sword lights kept hitting each other, making loud noises. The area within 10,000 meters was shaking. The high platform made of lapis lazuli was soon ravaged by the two of them. It was full of holes and looked like a scene of devastation. Such an intense battle naturally dazzled the eyes of the tens of thousands of citizens, who all cheered loudly for how wonderful it was. Everyone stared at the arena without blinking. Their hearts clenched tightly as they secretly worried for the two of them. Finally, 15 minutes passed. Yu Zhengfei and Qianshan Jinwu had made 200 moves. They had used up most of their vital energy. Finally, the winner was decided. There was no suspense in the result. Qianshan Jinwu, who was at the 7th level of Sky Origin stage, was indeed powerful. He defeated Yu Zhengfei. However, Yu Zhengfei was only at the 5th level of Sky Origin stage, but he lost to Qianshan Jinwu after over 100 moves. Qianshan Jinwu was also badly injured. He was covered in blood. It was unbelievable. Even though Yu Zhengfei lost, he was still honorable. He won the admiration of countless people and cultivators. Unfortunately, Yu Zhengfei's power was almost completely depleted, and his injuries were too severe. His dragon-patterned armor was stained with blood. He held his dragon spear with both hands. He stood on the ruined platform, bending over and gasping for breath. Brother Qianshan. You are amazing. I admire you. I accept my defeat wholeheartedly. Yu Zhengfei said in a hoarse voice. Then he turned around and walked down the platform. He staggered out of the square. Qianshan Jinwu put away his golden sword and wiped the blood off his mouth. He turned around and looked at the imperial tutor. Tens of thousands of people were still talking about the exciting fight. They were excited. The Emperor's preceptor walked onto the stage and announced loudly, in the second round, Qian Shanjinwu wins and Yu Zhengfei loses. Third round, Ji Tianqing will fight Duanmu Yulong. After the announcement, Qian Shanjinwu bowed to the imperial tutor and left the platform. The imperial tutor used an array to repair the broken platform. Then, he announced the start of the third round. Duanmu Yulong, who had been watching from below the platform, couldn't wait to get on the platform. The chance is finally here. As long as I kill Ji Tianqing on the platform, I can complete the Great Lord's order and become his right-hand man. Ji Tianqing, you will die today. Duanmu Yulong sneered in his heart. A cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. He held a silver sword in his left hand and pointed at Ji Tianqing with his right hand. He sneered and hooked his finger. This action was very arrogant and confident. Duanmu Yulong seemed to have victory in his hands. He didn't put Ji Tianqing in his eyes at all. The tens of thousands of people and cultivators around the square were in an uproar. They were all talking about it. Duanmu Yulong is so confident. Isn't he too arrogant? Maybe Duanmu Yulong thinks that he is 3 or 4 levels higher than Ji Tianqing. So, he is sure that Ji Tianqing can't defeat him. But in the previous battle, Ji Tianqing defeated Di Jianqing, who was in the 5th level of Sky Origin stage, with just 2 moves. Duanmu Yulong and Ji Tianqing are both princes of the Imperial Palace. Even if they are fighting on the platform, they should be learning from each other. Why do I feel like they have a grudge? Based on their performance in Giant Holy City, I hope that Ji Tianqing can win. Sigh, it's hard to say who will win. Although Duanmu Yulong is arrogant, Ji Tianqing doesn't have much chance of winning. Amidst the discussions of countless people, Ji Tianqing calmly went up to the ring. Although Duanmu Yulong was provoking him with his eyes and gestures, he wasn't angered at all. He was as calm as ever. After he stood still on the stage, Duanmu Yulong sneered and said, Ji Tianqing, swords and sabers have no eyes on the stage. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold back and kill you with one strike. If you know what's good for you, quickly admit defeat and surrender. Ji Tianqing stared coldly at Duanmu Yulong. He thought to himself, I have a close relationship with Yunyao. It's normal for the Duanmu and Murong families to be hostile towards me. However, Murong Lingfeng tried to rope me in with ill intentions. Duanmu Yulong didn't hide his hostility towards me. In the eyes of others, what he said was a deliberate provocation to provoke me. However, it's obvious that he wants to kill me. He wants to take advantage of this battle to kill me. Duanmu Yulong hid his killing intent very well. However, Ji Tianqing had the thunder spirit eyes. The spirit eyes seemed to have an even more magical effect. He could see through Duanmu Yulong's disguise and feel the killing intent in his heart. Damn bastard! I have no enmity with you, yet you want to kill me. Ji Tianqing was secretly furious. His whole body was burning with anger and his aura was rising steadily. However, Duanmu Yulong didn't know that Ji Tianqing had seen through his intentions. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was silent, he sneered contemptuously and said, Hee, it seems that you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. You're angry because of this. Since you don't know the difference between life and death, don't blame me for being ruthless. As his voice fell, Duanmu Yulong could no longer hold back his killing intent. He waved his sword and attacked like lightning. Myriad sword white dragon cry. Duanmu Yulong burst out with majestic true essence and instantly slashed out 69 blazing white sword lights. Each sword light was 30 meters long and contained an extremely sharp power. It instantly enveloped a radius of 100 meters and trapped Ji Tianqing. The 69 sword lights flew back and forth like lightning and condensed into a sword array to suppress Ji Tianqing. Duanmu Yulong pointed with his finger and 9 white sword lights flew out from the sword array. They converged into a 50-meter long white dragon and pounced on Ji Tianqing from the sky. Roar! The white dragon condensed from the sword lights was vivid and lifelike. It let out an earth-shaking dragon roar. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying white dragon was right in front of Ji Tianqing, about to swallow him whole. Chapter 604. When the sword array of the white dragon roar of 10,000 swords was formed and the holy white dragon pounced on Ji Tianqing, countless people were frightened and worried. The tens of thousands of people in the square all let out anxious cries of surprise, sweating for Ji Tianqing. At this critical juncture, Ji Tianqing could not avoid the holy white dragon's attack, so he did not hesitate to use the secret technique of Tianqing's 5 extremes. Earth Emperor Shield. He shouted in a low voice and circulated his true essence, frantically extracting the earth spiritual qi between heaven and earth. Suddenly, the earth spiritual qi within a 10-mile radius was gathered around him, condensing into an oval-shaped dark yellow light shield. Bam! Almost at the moment when the Earth Emperor shield was formed, the holy white dragon hit him hard. In the deafening loud noise, Ji Tianqing was sent flying 100 meters away, retreating to the edge of the ring. However, he was unscathed, and the Earth Emperor shield protecting him did not collapse, only a dozen cracks appeared. Seeing this scene, the people in the square were relieved. Yin Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were relieved. Duanmu Yulong's face frowned, and his expression became gloomy. Damn bastard, how dare he block my white dragon roar? This sword array secret technique was one of his secret techniques. He had not used it in Giant Holy City before, saving it to kill Ji Tianqing. However, he did not expect Ji Tianqing to be so powerful that he could block the sword array's attack. However, when Duanmu Yulong saw the cracks on the Earth Emperor shield, he sneered and said, "Humph, you can block it once, but I'd like to see if you can block the second and third attack." As he said that, Duanmu Yulong controlled the sword array again, releasing 12 sword lights, which condensed into a holy white dragon. This holy white dragon was stronger than the previous one, and its speed was faster. However, before the holy white dragon could attack, Ji Tianqing used his secret technique to counterattack. Burning Sky Palm. He raised his magma-like left arm and fiercely slapped it towards Duanmu Yulong. Suddenly, the endless scarlet flame true fire condensed into a giant flame palm. It instantly passed through the sword formation's blockade and slapped towards Duanmu Yulong. At that moment, the gigantic flaming palm that blotted out the sky was as dazzling as the sun, illuminating the entire square. The high platform with a radius of 200 meters was also filled with the red flame true fire, turning into a boundless sea of fire. Duanmu Yulong did not expect that Ji Tianqing would not block Bai Longyin's bombardment and would even use his finishing move to launch a counterattack. When the heaven-burning giant palm struck, his pupils constricted, and his face was filled with shock. Thousand Souls Cauldron. He shouted in a low voice, and a dim light flashed in his palm. Immediately, a simple and unadorned bronze cauldron appeared. This ancient cauldron was his most prized treasure. It was used to refine elixirs. It was a heavenly origin-grade treasure. Of course, other than refining pills, the ancient cauldron was also a magic treasure with both offensive and defensive capabilities. Swish! After the ancient cauldron was injected with true essence, it instantly turned into a 5-meter-tall bronze cauldron, protecting Duanmu Yulong. Almost at the same time, the burning sky palm that could destroy heaven and earth fell from the sky and slammed into Duanmu Yulong. Boom! A loud noise that shook the 9 heavens suddenly exploded on the high platform, shaking the ground within a radius of dozens of miles. The entire square violently shook, and the ground was shaken into dense gullies. Many martial artists and commoners were shaken to the ground. The arena with a radius of 200 meters had turned into a world of scarlet flames, and nothing could be seen clearly. The martial artists and commoners in the square could not see the situation in the arena, and they did not know the result. Everyone could only feel the destructive scarlet flame true fire through the defensive array, and how violent and terrifying its might was. After a long time, the scarlet flame true fire that filled the entire arena gradually dissipated. Tens of thousands of commoners and martial artists were finally able to see the situation in the arena. They saw that the indestructible arena had been smashed into pieces by the burning sky palm, turning into rubble and ruins. Ji Tianqing held the black dragon sword, proudly standing in the sky, unharmed. His white robe was spotless, and his golden wings were resplendent. His entire body exuded a domineering aura that looked down on the world, as if Kenshin was alive. And in the pile of rubble beneath his feet, there were dozens of charred copper cauldron fragments scattered. Duanmu Yulong's thousand souls cauldron was clearly shattered by the burning sky palm. At this time, there was a muffled bang as Duanmu Yulong drilled out of the rubble, sending countless rubble flying. He flapped his multicolored wings and flew into the sky, standing 200 meters away from Ji Tianqing. His eyes stared at Ji Tianqing, revealing a thick killing intent. There was no other way. Duanmu Yulong's appearance was too miserable, too embarrassing. His clothes had long been burned to ashes, leaving only a set of soft armor on his body. Moreover, it was full of cracks and charred black like charcoal. He was like a burnt sweet potato, his hair curled into a ball, his face was pitch black, and black smoke came out of his mouth. The commoners in the square were stunned when they saw Duanmu Yulong's appearance. Then, they burst into laughter and discussions. Of course, not only was Duanmu Yulong's appearance in a sorry state, his body was also seriously injured. Previously, he had been struck by lightning by Julingshen, so his injuries had not healed. Now, he had suffered another burning sky palm, making his injuries even worse. Of course, his fighting strength had sharply decreased, leaving him with only 40% of his original strength. His angry face distorted as he roared with grief and indignation, "Ji Tianqing! You bastard, I'll kill you!" Duanmu Yulong was so angry that he almost went berserk, almost losing his reason. He no longer concealed the killing intent in his heart. As he roared, he held his sword with both hands. His entire body ignited with anger and blood-red killing intent. His eyes were red as he charged at Ji Tianqing. Blood transformation divine art. Duanmu Yulong resolutely used the secret technique of the Duanmu family. He burned his own blood essence and sacrificed 8 years of bitter cultivation in order to increase his fighting strength by 3 times for 10 breaths of time. At this moment, his fighting strength was several times stronger than Qianshan Jinwu. In order to kill Ji Tianqing on the spot, he was willing to pay any price. World-destroying sword. With a furious roar, Duanmu Yulong held his sword with both hands and slashed out a 100-meter-long blood-red sword that could split the heavens and earth. This sword was enough to destroy everything within a 100-mile radius. It could split a city in half and turn it into ruins. When the blood-red sword fell from the sky, the air within a 10-mile radius seemed to have frozen. Tens of thousands of commoners stared in horror, their hearts in their throats. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was fearless as he shouted coldly. He coldly shouted, "Duanmu Yulong, since you're seeking death, I'll grant you death." As he spoke, he activated the sword embryo in his body, transforming it into a 30-meter-long golden sword. It flapped its golden wings and ruthlessly blasted at the berserk Duanmu Yulong. Sword of Judgment. Chapter 605. The Sword of Judgment with its golden wings didn't look as intimidating as the Sword of Bloody Light. But in fact, the two were almost the same. When the Sword of Judgment slashed through the sky and hit Duanmu Yulong, the Sword of Bloody Light also fell from the sky and hit Ji Tianqing hard. The two sword lights were terrifyingly powerful and could destroy the world. But the difference was that Duanmu Yulong didn't have any treasure to defend himself while Ji Tianqing closed his golden wings and the Sword of Bloody Light was about to hit him. Boom! Boom! The two of them were hit by the sword lights at the same time. Two loud noises that shook the sky sounded at the same time. At that moment, the world shook and the clouds changed color. The ground within a radius of tens of miles began to tremble as countless gullies appeared in the ground. Luckily, the imperial tutor saw that the situation wasn't good. He waved his hand and created a huge light shield to cover the entire square. That blocked the power from the arena and protected the tens of thousands of people in the square from being killed on the spot. After a long time, the loud noises that reverberated in the sky gradually disappeared. The 200 meters wide defensive array, the bloody light and the golden flame that filled the sky gradually disappeared. When everything returned to normal, everyone looked at the defensive array. Seeing the situation in the array, everyone was shocked. Countless people opened their mouths in astonishment. The square was deathly silent. Everyone had forgotten to shout and cheer. They saw that the arena had completely disappeared from the defensive array. Even the debris on the ground was gone. There was only a huge deep hole left in the array and dust flying in the air. Ji Tianqing and Duanmu Yulong were gone. There was no sound coming from the deep hole. The tens of thousands of people in the square came back to their senses and immediately burst into loud discussions and exclamations. Oh my God! Ji Tianqing and Duanmu Yulong's strength is actually so strong. This is unbelievable. If it weren't for the protection of the defensive array, I'm afraid everything within 100 miles would be in ruins. They are indeed the crown prince of the imperial residence. One of them is at Sky Origin Stage 3 and the other is at Sky Origin Stage 6. Yet, they can unleash the power of Sky Origin Stage 7. It's over. Ji Tianqing and Duanmu Yulong both disappeared. Could it be that the two of them perished together and turned into dust? In the crowd, Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Yen looked at the deep pit in the great formation with pale faces. Their eyes were filled with deep sorrow. The three of them felt their hearts clench as the same thought flashed through their minds. No. Tianqing is definitely not dead, he must still be alive. Big brother Tianqing will never die, never. Senior brother Tianqing, you will always be the best. I don't believe that you will be killed. The three of them stared at the deep pit and silently prayed for Ji Tianqing, hoping that he would appear as soon as possible. Even the imperial tutor and Long Yunxiao frowned. They could not help but fly to the top of the crater to investigate the situation. At this moment, a dazzling golden light suddenly flew out from the deep pit. Swoosh! A handsome and valiant figure was wrapped in the golden light. He flew to the top of the deep pit and stood proudly in the air. When the crowd saw the figure clearly, they immediately exclaimed in disbelief. Ji Tianqing! It's Ji Tianqing! Oh my God! He's still alive! He's not dead! I simply can't believe my eyes. He took Duanmu Yulong's strongest killing move and actually survived. A genius? He's a monster. A once-in-a-century genius. This is so exciting. The emperor's son of the imperial family is indeed powerful. This is a battle between the most powerful geniuses. This battle will definitely spread throughout Zhongzhou and the 9 regions of the south. Tens of thousands of people were in an uproar. They were shouting excitedly and discussing excitedly. Ji Tianqing, who was standing in the air, was still in his white robe. He stood tall and straight, and his expression was the same as usual. However, he was not unscathed. Upon closer inspection, one could see that his face was as pale as paper. There was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that Duanmu Yulong's most powerful attack in his berserk state had injured him. However, his injuries were not serious and were not life-threatening. Ji Tianqing looked around and saw that the imperial tutor, Long Yunxiao, and countless martial artists were staring at the deep pit as if waiting for Duanmu Yulong to appear. Therefore, he said in a low voice, "Everyone, there's no need to wait. Duanmu Yulong has turned into dust. His soul has returned to heaven and earth." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Their eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Long Yunxiao's expression changed. He asked in a hoarse voice, You killed Duanmu Yulong? His face was a little gloomy, and a look of deep worry flashed in his eyes. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, Today was supposed to be a spar, but Duanmu Yulong wanted to kill me. He wanted to take my life, so how could I just sit there and wait for death? He only has himself to blame for dying under my sword. He can't blame anyone else. Just as he said, swords have no eyes on the stage. Since he didn't surrender, he was prepared to die. Ji Tianqing's words were reasonable. The tens of thousands of citizens nodded their heads in agreement. After all, this was a principle that applied to all corners of the world. Duanmu Yulong wanted to kill Ji Tianqing, but he was not strong enough. Instead, he was killed by Ji Tianqing. He deserved to die, and no one would sympathize with him. Long Yunxiao did not sympathize with Duanmu Yulong. In fact, he was happy to see Duanmu Yulong killed. However, what he was truly worried about was that Ji Tianqing had formed a blood feud with the Duanmu family. How would he survive in the central state in the future? No. If he offended the Duanmu family, not only would he not be able to survive in the central state, he would not even have a place in the entire Tianxian continent. However, at this point, it was useless for him to say anything. He could only sigh in his heart. Sigh, the imperial tutor flew to the sky above the array with a solemn face. He announced loudly, Ji Tianqing wins the third round. Now, only Ji Tianqing and Qianshan Jinwu have advanced to the next round. Both of you, please recuperate and restore your strength as soon as possible. In 6 hours, the two of you will have the final battle to determine the winner. The imperial tutor spoke in a businesslike manner. He was sacred, majestic, and very fair. After announcing the result, he used the power of the array to repair the deep hole in the defensive array and rebuild the stage. Ji Tianqing also left the array silently and flew back to Yunyao and the rest. Yao Yao, Ku, Yen, protect me. I need to recuperate and restore my true core strength as soon as possible. He instructed in a low voice. Then, he immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and started to recuperate his internal injuries. In the previous battle, he had suffered serious injuries. He had used his trump card twice and used 60% of his power. Chapter 606. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged on the ground, holding a piece of spirit stone in each hand. He was absorbing the spirit qi to heal himself. Yunyao, Ji Ku, and Yen sat in a circle around him, working together to help him recover quickly. Ling Yichen also rushed over to check on the situation and quickly worked to help Ji Tianqing. With everyone's help, Ji Tianqing only needed to circulate his energy and recuperate for 4 hours before his injuries were completely healed. There were 2 hours left. He tried his best to absorb the spirit qi to replenish his true essence and recover his power quickly. Unknowingly, it was already afternoon. 6 hours had passed and the final battle was about to begin. The imperial tutor had already rebuilt the arena and strengthened the defensive array. Tens of thousands of people were looking forward to the battle and they were getting more and more excited. Qianshan Jinwu was the first to step onto the arena. He was full of confidence and had a well-thought-out plan. Ji Tianqing also finished his cultivation and stepped onto the arena under everyone's gaze. He stood 100 meters away from Qianshan Jinwu. They looked at each other and a strong fighting spirit burst out from their bodies. Their momentum kept rising and their bodies were accumulating true essence. Qianshan Jinwu said in a low voice, Ji Tianqing, I reached the 7th level of Sky Origin Stage 3 years ago, but you only reached the 3rd level of Sky Origin Stage 2 months ago. It was a miracle that you could defeat Duanmu Yulong in the battle. You will be famous in the world. Now your true essence has been used up and you are seriously injured. You've already lost this battle. Admit defeat. Qianshan Jinwu's tone was very firm, as if he was stating a fact. Countless practitioners in the square didn't think he was arrogant and they all nodded in agreement. In the martial world, it was rare for a 3rd-level Sky Origin Stage practitioner to defeat a 4th-level Sky Origin Stage practitioner. Those who could defeat a 5th-level Sky Origin Stage practitioner were top geniuses. It was almost impossible to defeat a 6th-level Sky Origin Stage practitioner. Once it happened, it would be a miracle. It was impossible for him to defeat a cultivator at the 7th level of the Sky Origin Stage with a gap of 4 levels. There had never been such a case since ancient times. Moreover, Qianshan Jinwu was not an ordinary Sky Origin Stage cultivator. He was a famous genius in the Central Plains. In everyone's opinion, Ji Tianqing would definitely lose today. He would definitely lose this battle. He had no chance of winning. However, Ji Tianqing stared at Qianshan Jinwu and shook his head. Qianshan Jinwu, we're 4 levels apart. I can't defeat you. This is common sense. But I've long made up my mind to become the domain lord of the heavenly stellar region. Since I've already come this far, how can I admit defeat? Even if I know it's impossible, I won't give up. Perhaps, I will create a second miracle today. Without fighting, who knows what the result will be? Ji Tianqing's tone was calm, but it contained an unwavering attitude, which made people feel deep respect for him. Even though Qianshan Jinwu was his opponent, he couldn't help but nod and say seriously, very good. Ji Tianqing, even if you lose to me today, you are still worthy of my respect. After today, your name will shake the world. You will also be one of the top 10 peerless geniuses in the Monarch Mansion. Qianshan Jinwu put away the last trace of contempt and arrogance in his heart. He held the golden heavy sword with both hands, and his whole body burst out with a monstrous fighting spirit. Ji Tianqing, let's fight to our heart's content. 7 demon sealing swords. Qianshan Jinwu roared with an imposing aura, and a majestic true core strength burst out. He waved his heavy sword and slashed out 7 sword radiances that could split heaven and earth. The 7 giant sword radiances formed by the 5-colored spiritual light were each 50 meters long. They were like giant swords that could split mountains and rivers. They flew above Ji Tianqing's head. The entire arena was filled with violent sword qi. The 5-colored brilliance illuminated the world, and it emitted an earth-shattering wave of true core strength. What was unexpected was that each of the 7 huge sword lights split into 7. In an instant, there were 49 sword lights. Swoosh! 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 49 gigantic sword lights enveloped the entire arena. It was as if a gigantic sword array had descended from the heavens and slammed down. The power of the 7 demon sealing swords was so terrifying that it made countless people cry out in surprise. No one expected Qianshan Jinwu to be so cautious against Ji Tianqing. He used such a powerful killing move as soon as he attacked. Ji Tianqing was enveloped by the sword array. There were huge sword radiances in all directions, and there was nowhere for him to hide. In the face of Qianshan Jinwu's powerful attack, he could only use his ultimate skill to counterattack. Burning Sky Palm. Ji Tianqing shouted in a low voice. He raised his left palm with a cold expression and slapped out a huge flaming palm. Boom! The huge palm formed by the red flame primordial fire instantly shattered more than a dozen sword radiances. It carried the power to destroy heaven and earth and attacked Qianshan Jinwu. The arena was only 200 meters wide, and the burning sky palm took up half of the space. How could Qianshan Jinwu dodge it? Bang! In an instant, Qianshan Jinwu did not have time to block it. He was hit by the burning sky palm, and his body was engulfed by the monstrous red flame. At the same time, more than 30 sword radiances engulfed Ji Tianqing's body and slammed into him. However, he was already prepared. When the sword radiances were about to pierce his head, he had already closed his golden wings. The entire arena was filled with flames, and it suddenly turned into a world of red flames. Nothing could be seen clearly. Rumble. An earth-shattering sound burst out and spread for hundreds of miles. It shook the mountains and the earth. The nearly 10,000 warriors in the square were dumbfounded as they watched this scene. Their faces were full of astonishment and horror. They just exchanged their first move, and it's already so intense. Oh my God! They didn't even try to launch a few attacks. Why are they so desperate? Isn't this too terrifying? Duan Muyulong was severely injured by that flaming palm and was burned to a crisp. Ji Tianqing used his trump card in the first move. He is so decisive. Countless martial artists and commoners discussed excitedly, letting out waves of exclamations. Everyone stared at the arena that was like a sea of fire, waiting for the result. After a long time, the red flames that covered the sky gradually dissipated. Everyone could see the situation in the arena clearly. The ground of the arena that had been rebuilt and reinforced was now covered with spiderweb-like cracks. More than a dozen holes had been blasted into the ground, and there was a huge, deep, charred pit. Ji Tianqing stood at the southern edge of the arena. His face was pale and he was panting. His eyes and expression were still calm. Qian Shanzhenwu stood on the other side. His robe had long been burned to black ashes, and his hair was charred and curly. He looked like he was in a sorry state. Not only that, his breathing was a little chaotic. He could not help but cough a few times. A puff of black smoke and red blood came out of his mouth. Obviously, Qian Shanzhenwu's internal organs had been injured by the burning sky palm. His combat strength had weakened a lot. He stared at Ji Tianqing. His eyes were surging with monstrous fighting spirit. He shouted in a hoarse voice, "Ji Tianqing, no wonder Duan Muyulong died under your sword. You are really a monster." Chapter 607. Although Qian Shanzhenwu was injured by the burning sky palm after exchanging a blow with Ji Tianqing, he was still confident. However, he was still confident. Moreover, he stimulated his potential even more and erupted with his peak combat strength. Heaven and Earth Furnace. Qian Shanzhenwu roared and waved his heavy sword without hesitation, slashing out 9 sword auras in all directions. The 9 sword auras were dozens of meters long and contained the power to split the heavens and earth. They were extremely violent. However, none of the 9 sword lights were aimed at Ji Tianqing's front, back, left, and right. The people in the square were puzzled when they saw this scene. They did not understand what Qian Shanzhenwu was trying to do. In the next instant, a shocking scene appeared. The 9 sword auras seemed to casually slash the arena and the sky, bursting out a dazzling dark red brilliance. However, the earth-shattering dark red light enveloped the entire arena, turning it into a huge and towering furnace. There were boundless flames in the furnace. They rose fiercely and rolled as if they had the power to burn the sky and boil the sea. Qian Shanzhenwu stood in the sky above the furnace, exuding a violent domineering aura. He shouted in a deep voice, "Heaven and Earth Furnace, I am the master. Ji Tianqing, your life is in my hands." As he spoke, Qian Shanzhenwu suddenly raised his left hand. A shocking hurricane immediately swept up in the furnace, carrying flames that could burn everything and swept toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was in the dark red furnace. He was like a piece of charcoal that was about to be ignited, burned, and finally turned into ashes. The situation was just as Qian Shanzhenwu said. The entire arena had turned into a huge furnace. It was like Qian Shanzhenwu's domain, and everything was under his control. If Ji Tianqing could not escape the suppression of the furnace, he would definitely be burned to ashes. Fortunately, he had already mastered the 5 elements and had the power of the red flame true fire. No matter how powerful the heaven and earth furnace was, it could not do anything to him for a while. In this dangerous situation, Ji Tianqing was still calm and composed. He circulated his energy to resist the bombardment of the furnace's flames while thinking of a way to break out. Qian Shanzhenwu's heaven and earth cauldron not only borrows the power of fire, but also utilizes the Tao of array formations and the wondrous Tao of sword. In addition, his heavy sword has also disappeared. It must have merged with the heaven and earth furnace to provide power for this secret technique. In just a few breaths of time, Ji Tianqing had analyzed the structure and attributes of the heaven and earth furnace. He was just about to observe the essence of the heaven and earth furnace, the foundation of the formation, and the structure of the veined patterns in order to find a way to break it. After all, his attainments in array Tao were extraordinary. Even the average divine prime cultivator was inferior to him. However, Qianshan Zhenwu would not give him a chance. He immediately waved his hands and made a seal, launching a powerful attack. Heavenly wind as a saber, earthly fire as a sword. Saber and sword slay the body, furnace to melt the soul. After Qianshan Zhenwu formed the Dharma seal, he continuously waved his palms and injected his majestic true essence into the heaven and earth furnace. Instantly, a violent gust of wind blew in the furnace, and the raging flames condensed into thousands of flaming swords, shooting towards Ji Tianqing like a rain of arrows. With the help of the wind, the power of the thousands upon thousands of flaming sword lights immediately increased to the limit, becoming incomparably violent. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Thousands upon thousands of flaming sword lights instantly drowned Ji Tianqing's figure and bombarded him fiercely. Bang, bang, bang. A deafening explosion erupted, causing the ground within a radius of dozens of miles to shake violently. Everyone opened their eyes wide, staring at the flaming sword lights in the furnace, looking for Ji Tianqing's figure. In their eyes, Ji Tianqing was killed by the thousands upon thousands of flaming sword lights. The sword lights were so powerful that even a 1,000-meter-tall mountain would be turned into dust in an instant. Ji Tianqing would be severely injured if not killed by such a fierce attack. Sigh. It seems that Ji Tianqing is still slightly inferior. Well, Qianshan Zhenwu is too powerful. Although he is only at Sky Origin Stage LV7, he is as powerful as an ordinary Sky Origin Stage LV8 cultivator. What an exciting and intense battle. I didn't expect Qianshan Zhenwu to have mastered such a marvelous secret skill. Ji Tianqing is doomed to lose. He will definitely lose today. It would be fine if he was only injured and defeated. I am afraid that he will be killed by the thousands of swords. It is such a pity for such a peerless genius to die like this. While countless people were discussing, the thousands upon thousands of sword lights in the furnace finally dissipated. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared again. He was in perfect condition, and it seemed like he was fine. After all, when the thousands upon thousands of sword lights bombarded him, he used the golden rock wings in time to protect himself with the golden wings. However, using the golden wings to protect himself consumed a large amount of true core power. His face was pale, and he was panting heavily. His martial arts were fading quickly. His originally spotless white robe was now charred black. Countless holes had been burned into it, making him look somewhat miserable. Qianshan Zhenwu was stunned. He couldn't believe it. He blocked my thousands upon thousands of sword lights. How is that possible? After being stunned for a moment, Qianshan Zhenwu's eyes fell on Ji Tianqing's golden wings. He immediately realized the problem. So it was that treasure that saved him. Back in Giant Spiritual City, he used his wings to block the lightning attack of the mighty miracle god. No matter how powerful my ultimate skill is, it can't be compared to the lightning pillar of the mighty miracle god. Could it be that I can't do anything to Ji Tianqing? Qianshan Zhenwu frowned, and his eyes became a little gloomy. At this moment, Ji Tianqing circulated his martial arts for a moment. His true core power was restored smoothly, and his face returned to normal. He immediately unleashed his secret technique and shot out a black pillar of water that soared into the sky, blasting towards the edge of the heaven and earth furnace. Black water rope. The surging black water pillar was hundreds of meters tall and as thick as a house. It was like a huge black dragon. This was the first time Ji Tianqing used the black water rope in a battle after mastering it. Although the black water rope was not violent enough, he believed that water could suppress fire. The black water rope would definitely be able to suppress the heaven and earth furnace. Bang! The dragon-like black water rope fiercely hit the barrier of the heaven and earth furnace, and a dull sound rang out. A large hole appeared in the wall of light formed by the dark red flames, and dozens of cracks appeared. However, the heaven and earth furnace's barrier was too thick, and its defensive power was very strong. The black water rope could not penetrate it. Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed, and he shouted in a low voice, "It's really effective. Then let's do it again and completely break through the heaven and earth furnace." Under his control, the dragon-like black water rope flew back, circled twice in the air, and fiercely hit the heaven and earth furnace's barrier. Bang! This time, the heaven and earth furnace's barrier was finally broken through, and a huge hole appeared. The dark red flames immediately leaked out, and the entire heaven and earth furnace shook violently. Seeing this, Qianshan Jinwu's face turned gloomy, and a resolute cold light flashed in his eyes. Chapter 608. Qianshan Jinwu saw that Ji Tianqing had mastered the water secret skill, which could restrain the power of the furnace of heaven and earth. Therefore, he didn't repair the hole in the furnace of heaven and earth. Instead, he used a horrifying move that was similar to self-explosion. Furnace C, heaven and earth collapse. Qianshan Jinwu shouted in a low voice. He waved his hands and made a seal. The furnace of heaven and earth with a radius of 200 meters exploded completely. Boom! At that instant, the furnace collapsed and was obliterated, and it erupted with might capable of obliterating the heavens and the earth. It erupted with boundless blazing flames that completely filled the entire arena. Nothing could be seen on the arena except for the dark red fire. The loud sound that shook the sky spread over a radius of 100 miles. It even shook the sky reaching peak of the imperial court. Fortunately, the imperial tutor had strengthened the defense array and blocked the power of the furnace of heaven and earth. Otherwise, when the power that could destroy the heavens and the earth erupted, the boundless flames would spread out and burn everything within a radius of 100 miles, turning it into scorched earth and ruins. The square shook violently. Countless civilians and martial artists were shaken. Some people couldn't stand still and fell to the ground. Even so, no one cared about their own safety. They stared at the arena that was like a sea of fire. It's over. Ji Tianqing is dead. Such a horrifying explosion. Even the heavens and earth will be destroyed, let alone flesh and blood. The furnace of heaven and earth has exploded. How can the charcoal in the furnace survive? Sigh. What a pity for a newly emerged peerless talent. A powerhouse at Sky Origin Stage 7 can actually use such a destructive secret skill. Is this really the power and skill of a martial artist? Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Yan and the others in the crowd all turned pale. Their eyes were fixed on the sea of fire, and their hearts were filled with worry. They believed that Ji Tianqing was invincible. Even if he fought against Qianshan Jinwu, who was at Sky Origin Stage 7, he wouldn't lose. However, they also knew that it was only a fantasy. It would never happen. No matter how outstanding Ji Tianqing was, he was still a human, not a god. In their eyes, Ji Tianqing being able to kill Duanmu Yulong and fight Qianshan Jinwu to this extent was already a world-shaking miracle. At this moment, they no longer hoped that Ji Tianqing could win. As long as Ji Tianqing could live safely, that was enough. Finally, the sea of fire that filled the entire arena gradually dissipated. The arena regained its clarity, and everyone could see the situation clearly. He saw that the entire arena had already collapsed, turning into scorched earth and shattered rocks that were still emitting spirals of black smoke. Qianshan Jinwu was standing in the sky, while Ji Tianqing was standing on top of the rubble. He was hunched over and gasping for breath. The white robe he wore had already turned to ashes and completely disappeared. He was only left with a set of soft armor, but it was also full of holes and pitch black. The brilliance of the golden wings was very dim. Dark red blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth and fell on the scorched earth and ruins. The dark red shattered rocks still contained a terrifying heat. They evaporated his blood and turned it into 5-colored light spots that spread out. Obviously, Ji Tianqing had blocked the power of the heaven and earth furnace's self-explosion. He was not killed on the spot, but he was seriously injured. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Tens of thousands of people and martial artists burst into an incredulous exclamation. They were so excited that they danced and spoke incoherently. "Oh my God! This is a miracle! Ji Tianqing endured such a destructive attack and still survived. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would never believe it. Even if Ji Tianqing is defeated today, he has created a miracle. Although he has lost, it is still a glorious defeat. This is too scary. With Ji Tianqing's performance, even in the Emperor Mansion, he must be a top genius." In the sky, the Imperial Tutor and Long Yunxiao were also in disbelief. The Imperial Tutor's eyes were shining. He thought to himself, Ji Tianqing is indeed the successor of Kenshin. In the future, he will definitely become the second Kenshin. Unfortunately, he has not had enough time to grow. If he was given another month or two, he might really be able to create a miracle and defeat Qian Shanzhenwu. Long Yunxiao's mood was very complicated. He muttered to himself, Ji Tianqing, "Oh Ji Tianqing, you are really a fearsome and respectful opponent. I am the #1 genius of the human race, but I have long been defeated by you. If it were not for Yao Yao, I would really like to be friends with you." At this moment, Qian Shanzhenwu also came to his senses. He shouted with a serious face, "Ji Tianqing. You should be proud of yourself for being able to block my ultimate killing move. At this point, you are already an arrow at the end of its flight. How can you fight with me? For hundreds of years, there has never been a genius like you in our race. I don't want to kill you. Just admit defeat." Qian Shanzhenwu was very clear that he could defeat Ji Tianqing because he had been practicing martial arts for more than 40 years. Ji Tianqing was only an 18-year-old young man, who had only been practicing martial arts for 1/3 of his time. If Ji Tianqing was given another year, he would definitely not be a match for Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing slowly raised his head and looked at him with clear eyes. He said in a low and firm voice, "No. I will never admit defeat. Qian Shanzhenwu, you are indeed very strong. You are the strongest opponent I have ever met in my life. However, I have not fallen yet, so you have not won." As soon as he finished speaking, he activated the remaining 60% of his power and performed his ultimate killer move. Sword of Judgment. The sword embryo in his body flew out and instantly turned into a 30-meter-long holy sword with dazzling golden light. The holy sword was surrounded by golden flames as if it had a pair of wings. It exploded with unstoppable power and charged toward Qian Shanzhenwu. Qian Shanzhenwu's expression changed immediately. Apparently, he did not expect that Ji Tianqing, who was at the end of its flight, could still perform such a powerful killer move. At this critical moment, he held the heavy sword tightly with both hands and unleashed his majestic true core strength to form a sword-like barrier in front of him. In the next moment, the sword of judgment hit the sword-like barrier hard, bursting out a thunderous sound. Boom! Crack! Golden light burst out and covered the sky. It was as if there was a golden sun in the sky, which dazzled the entire square. Qian Shanzhenwu was immediately sent flying backward and crashed into the light barrier of the defensive array. Boom! He was bounced back by the light barrier and fell from the sky. He spat out a mouthful of blood. After injuring Qian Shanzhenwu, the sword of judgment quickly shrank back into the sword embryo and flew back into Ji Tianqing's body. At the same time, Ji Tianqing opened the third eye on his forehead and stared at Qian Shanzhenwu, who was falling from the sky. Thunderbolt! Ji Tianqing shouted in a low voice and released all the thunderbolt power in his spiritual eye. The extremely violent thunderbolt condensed into a blue light beam that was more than 10 meters long and as thick as a bucket. It slashed toward Qian Shanzhenwu. Kaboom! Chapter 609. The destructive lightning beam hit Qian Shanzhenwu. The azure lightning completely enveloped his figure. Once again, he was sent flying backwards and crashed heavily into the light wall of the formation, causing a muffled bang. Then he fell from the sky into the ruins. He rolled a few times before he stopped. His body was burnt black. He was so twisted that he didn't look like a human being anymore. Blue lightning surrounded him. There were hundreds of wounds all over his body. Blood gushed out from the wounds and dyed the ruins red. Qian Shanzhenwu, who was so powerful a moment ago, was severely injured by Ji Tianqing's 2 moves. It was too horrible to look at. This scene made everyone in the square dumbfounded. They had all seen it. Countless civilians and martial practitioners let out cries of disbelief and discussion. Even Kun Wu, Fox Princess, and Tai Yi of the Water Clan, who were watching the battle silently, were shocked. Wasn't Ji Tianqing severely injured? How can he still use such a horrifying skill? He is about to lose, but he can still fight back. Is he going to turn the tables and defeat Qian Shanzhenwu? After today, the situation in King's Mansion will change again. Ji Tianqing has only been in King's Mansion for 2 months, and he is already so powerful. Ji Tianqing tried his best to straighten his body and stand on the scorched earth. His face was pale, and he was sweating. Blood kept pouring out from his wounds. He looked miserable. After using the Sword of Judgment, he had used up 30% of his energy. He only had 30% left. At this point, his combat strength was also extremely weak, and he couldn't even suppress his injuries. He couldn't care about his injuries. He could only use the self-healing ability of Kenshin blood to recover slowly. Qian Shanzhenwu, who was lying in the ruins, struggled to get up. Qian Shanzhenwu's injuries were worse than Ji Tianqing's. His face was distorted beyond recognition. He didn't look like a human being at all. However, he was a level 7 Sky Origin Stage cultivator after all. He still had 40% of his power, and there was still powerful spiritual energy running inside his body. As he circulated his internal energy to suppress his injuries, he staggered across the ruins and walked towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing. Even if you severely injured me, how much power do you have left? I've said it before, it's impossible for you to defeat me, and it's impossible for you to create miracles. Victory is mine, and the title of Tianqian Region Lord is mine. Qian Shanzhenwu roared in a low voice. He gripped his golden sword tightly again and slashed towards Ji Tianqing with an earth-shattering sword. Qian Shan. Mie Jin. Qian Shanzhenwu unleashed the last 40% of his power and displayed the unique skill of the Qianshan family that had been passed down for centuries. This sword was 100 meters long and shone with dazzling 5-colored light. It truly had the power to destroy 100 miles of heaven and earth and annihilate 1,000 mountains. Although this wasn't his most beautiful move, it was his most powerful trump card. Qian Shanzhenwu didn't hesitate to use this sword to end the battle. Ji Tianqing didn't want to be outdone. He activated the last 30% of his power and performed a unique skill. Tianqing. 5 extremes. He waved his palms and made a mysterious seal. He communicated with the world with his spiritual mind and soul, and instantly controlled the power of heaven and earth within 100 miles. Within 100 miles, a hurricane was blowing in the sky. All the spiritual chi of the 5 elements gathered and rushed into the arena. All of a sudden, a giant sword that was also 100 meters long appeared in the sky and slashed towards Qian Shanzhenwu. Qian Shanzhenwu's unique skill was a unique skill passed down from his family. It was a powerful killing move that he released with all his power. Ji Tianqing's unique skill absorbed the power of heaven and earth within 100 miles and added 30% of his own power. The two heaven-splitting swords were equally powerful. Both of them had the power to destroy the world. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, the two giant swords collided with each other and made a loud noise that shook the sky. At that moment, the arena within a radius of 200 meters was completely filled with 5-colored flames. It became so dazzling that nothing could be seen. The ground within a few dozen miles shook violently. The people in the square were also shaken. The deafening noise reverberated in the sky for dozens of seconds before it gradually stopped. When the 5-colored light dissipated, everyone could see the situation in the arena clearly. Without a doubt, the arena had disappeared again. The scorched earth and ruins were gone. There was only a huge pit with a radius of 200 meters left. At the southern edge of the huge pit, Ji Tianqing leaned against the barrier of the array. Blood was flowing out of his body. He was completely covered in blood. He was severely injured. His vital essence had been exhausted. The sword embryo in his body had become dim. Without the support of his vital essence, the Kenshin battle robe had also been retracted into his body. He couldn't use it anymore. At this moment, he was truly at the end of his rope. He didn't have any battle strength left. At the northern edge of the huge pit, Qian Shanzhenwu sat on the ground. His back was against the barrier of the array. He was panting with his eyes closed. His golden sword had fallen into the huge pit, but he couldn't pick it up. It was difficult for him to even move his fingers. He had also exhausted all his strength. He didn't have any battle strength left. Any strong commoner youth would be able to beat him up. Of course, his injuries were even more severe. His entire body was a bloody mess. He looked like a piece of roasted meat. Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu were both panting silently. Neither of them had the strength to speak. The tens of thousands of people and warriors in the square stared at this scene with their mouths agape. They were all shocked and surprised. The crowd was quiet for a moment. Then, they started discussing like a flash flood. How could this be? What kind of result is this? Who won? Does anyone understand? Can anyone explain? Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu have both exhausted their strength. They are seriously injured. It's impossible to tell who won. Don't tell me, the two of them are tied. A draw. Ji Tianqing didn't lose. He tied with Qian Shanzhenwu, who was at Sky Origin Stage LV7. Isn't this too unbelievable? Miracle. This is a real miracle. Although it's a draw, in my heart, the winner is Ji Tianqing. That's right. Ji Tianqing is younger than Qian Shanzhenwu by more than 30 years. He is 4 levels lower than Qian Shanzhenwu, but he tied with him. This is a victory. Not only were the people talking excitedly, but Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Yan were also excited and relieved. They kept cheering for Ji Tianqing. Ling Yi Xiong, Kunwu, Fox Princess, Tai Yi, and the other princes were also shocked. They couldn't believe this result. High up in the sky, the imperial tutor and Long Yunxiao were also surprised. They showed complicated expressions. They exchanged glances and secretly discussed for a while. Then, the imperial tutor flew to the top of the arena and announced the result. The final battle is over. Everyone has seen the result. Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu tied. Chapter 610. The result announced by the imperial tutor caused countless people to discuss. But in the eyes of the crowd, his decision was undoubtedly the best choice. Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu were tied, so the emperor could only make a decision. After all, the 9 southern regions were all under the imperial court. Every region leader was an overlord, but they were also loyal generals of the imperial court. They had to follow the imperial court's deployment and orders. In the discussion of countless people, the imperial tutor waved his hand and removed the defensive formation. Then, he waved his sleeves and shot out 2 beams of greenwood light. The 2 beams of greenwood light entered the bodies of Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu, immediately suppressing their injuries and restoring their vitality. Then, the imperial tutor used a formation to gather the power of heaven and earth and restore the square to its original state. After doing all this, he left the square with Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu and flew to the imperial court at the top of the mountain. Long Yunxiao followed closely behind and rushed to the top of the mountain. After a while, the imperial tutor, Ji Tianqing, and Qian Shanzhenwu arrived at the top of the mountain and entered the palace of heaven and earth. The 2 of them stood in the hall and waited. The imperial tutor went to the emperor's study to report the news. Not long after, the imperial tutor returned and said to the 2 of them in a dignified voice, "His Majesty the Emperor is in the study. The 2 of you can go and see him." Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu nodded and left the hall together. They rushed to the emperor's study. When the 2 of them entered the study, they saw that there was only the emperor sitting behind the desk in the simple and elegant study. The emperor was wearing a golden dragon robe and a purple gold dragon crown. His aura was dignified and sacred. His eyes contained a mysterious power that could see through the hearts of people. The 2 of them walked to the study and stood still. They bowed together and paid their respects. "Greetings, His Majesty the Emperor." The emperor looked at their miserable appearance and nodded slightly. He said in a dignified voice, "Rise." This emperor never thought that the battle between the 2 of you would end up like this. This is truly surprising. Especially Ji Tianqing. He is only at the 3rd level of Sky Origin stage, yet he has created such a miracle. What a miracle! The emperor actually praised Ji Tianqing to his face without hesitation. This was definitely a great honor. Qian Shanzhenwu's expression changed slightly. His heart was filled with envy and jealousy. However, Ji Tianqing's expression remained calm and composed. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty. You're neither arrogant nor rash." "Very good." The emperor nodded slightly, revealing a satisfied look. When Qian Shanzhenwu saw that the emperor admired and thought highly of Ji Tianqing, he immediately cursed in his heart. He already had a bad premonition. At this moment, the emperor spoke again, "Both of you are geniuses of my clan. One of you is a peerless genius, while the other is a genius with extraordinary talent. No matter who was chosen to be the Tianqian region lord, he would be the best candidate. However, before I make a decision, I want to ask both of you why you want to be the Tianqian region lord regardless of your life and death." After that, the emperor added in a dignified tone, "Both of you must tell the truth. There can be no falsehood in your words." His eyes became deep and mysterious. He quietly emitted invisible divine soul power, which covered Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu. The emperor, who had cultivated the Dharma form of the primordial spirit and mastered the means of the gods, could see through people's hearts and souls at a glance. In front of him, Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu could not hide anything from him. It was impossible for them to lie. "Qian Shanzhenwu, you go first." The emperor looked at Qian Shanzhenwu with dignified eyes and said in a low voice. Qian Shanzhenwu's expression suddenly became serious. He cupped his hands and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, I am the legitimate son of the Qianshan family. Since I was young, I have shouldered the mission of revitalizing the family. During my time as the city lord of Yeni City, I did my best to govern the city and tried my best to show my talent. I wanted to be valued by the imperial court. If I can become the Tianqian region lord, I will not only become a noble overlord, but also revitalize the Qianshan family and protect the territory of the imperial court. I will definitely be loyal to the imperial court and do my best." Qian Shanzhenwu's words were from the bottom of his heart. They were his true thoughts. In front of the emperor, he did not dare to lie. After hearing this, the emperor's expression did not change at all. He was still dignified and solemn. He did not comment on this. He just nodded slightly and looked at Ji Tianqing with dignified eyes. He asked in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, why are you fighting so hard for the position of the Tianshan region lord?" Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and bowed. His expression was normal as he said, "Reporting to your majesty, I do not yearn for the power and prestige of the region lord. I only wish to do my best to protect the stability and peace of the Tianshan region. In the Tianshan region, there is a small backward country called the Qingyun Kingdom. It is my hometown. My family and home are there. In the star ancient realm of the Tianshan region, there is also the Sky Pillar sect. That is my sect. My master, my seniors, and my friends are there. I want to become the Tianshan region lord. Only then can I protect the Tianshan region from the invasion of demons and disasters. Only then can I protect my family and home. I can protect my sect and friends." At this point, Ji Tianqing paused for a moment. He looked at the emperor with a determined gaze and said in a solemn tone, "When the Sky Pillar sect suffered a great calamity and the demon emperor appeared, I was determined to fight the demon emperor with my sect's elders and fellow disciples. Because of this, I was able to defeat the demon emperor and protect the Sky Pillar sect and the star ancient realm. Although I am an insignificant person in the mortal world, I will do my best to protect my family and friends. I will not hesitate to sacrifice my life for this." After listening to his words, the emperor immediately showed a gratified smile and nodded solemnly, "Good. Very good. The imperial court does not appoint anyone to be the Tianshan region lord for you to enjoy the prestige and power of a region lord. It is also not for you to revive your family and seek personal benefits for yourself. A region lord must protect the peace of the region and the people in the region. For this, you will not hesitate to sacrifice your life. This is the true mission of a region lord." The emperor praised Ji Tianqing twice in a row. It was obvious that he approved of Ji Tianqing's idea. Qian Shanzhenwu immediately understood the result. He was filled with disappointment and frustration, and his eyes dimmed. He lowered his head in silence and pondered over the words of Ji Tianqing and the emperor. After a while, he raised his head and bowed to the emperor. "I will remember your majesty's teachings and know what to do from now on." The emperor nodded slightly and announced solemnly, "I announce that from today onwards, the imperial court appoints Ji Tianqing as the Tianshan region lord. Ji Tianqing will hold the region lord's golden seal granted by the imperial court and lead the 10 countries and hundreds of sects in the Tianshan region. He has the power of life and death." After the emperor announced the appointment of the imperial court, he ordered the imperial tutor to draft an imperial edict and announce it to the world and the 9 regions in the south. The battle for the region lord was settled. Ji Tianqing and Qian Shanzhenwu bowed to the emperor and were about to leave the study. Chapter 611. After Ji Tianqing left the study, the imperial tutor was already waiting for him outside the door. "Territorial Lord Tianqing, please wait." The imperial tutor waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and stopped him with a kind smile. Ji Tianqing stopped and saluted with his hands folded. "May I ask what orders the imperial tutor has for me?" The imperial tutor stroked his beard and said slowly, "Territorial Lord Tianqing, you are seriously injured now. Please go back and recuperate. In a month, please come to the imperial court again to receive the territorial lord's golden seal and the decree of appointment. Only then can you take up the position. During this time, the imperial court will also issue an imperial decree to announce the news. In addition, the imperial court will build a territorial lord's mansion for you and form a garrison army. These trivial matters will be taken care of by the imperial court, but you will have to wait patiently for a while. Ji Tianqing understood that this was a normal process, so he saluted with his hands folded. I understand. Thank you, Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Tutor smiled and nodded. Then, he left the palace of heaven and earth with him and rushed to the square at the foot of the mountain. When they arrived at the square at the foot of the mountain, Qian Shanzhenwu had already left with a gloomy expression. Nearly 10,000 people in the square looked at Qian Shanzhenwu's lonely figure as he left. They were all discussing enthusiastically. Many people guessed the result when they saw Qian Shanzhenwu's expression and reaction. At this moment, when they saw the Imperial Tutor bring Ji Tianqing to the square, they were even more convinced of their guess. The Emperor's preceptor waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, signaling for everyone to stop talking. Then, he announced in a solemn tone, "Everyone, the Emperor has made his decision. He has chosen the most suitable candidate for the position of Heavenly Stellar Region Lord." That's right. Just as everyone guessed and expected, Ji Tianqing will be the territorial lord of Tianqian from today onwards. Although many people had guessed the result. When they heard the Imperial Tutor announce the result personally, they were inexplicably excited and cheered and shouted. All of a sudden, the plaza was filled with thunderous cheers. Waves of cheers erupted like a mountain torrent. That's great. Ji Tianqing has indeed become the Heavenly Stellar Region Lord. That's what everyone wants. Ji Tianqing's performance was so perfect, and he's also a peerless genius that only appears once in 100 years. Who else can I choose but him? Although Qian Shanzhenwu is also very strong, he is far from Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing is only 17 or 18, right? He became a domain lord at such a young age. Oh my God! He's definitely the youngest domain lord in history. An 18-year-old overlord, that's too scary. This is simply unprecedented. Countless commoners and warriors were cheering and discussing excitedly. Over the past few days, they had watched the entire process of the election and witnessed Ji Tianqing's various performances with their own eyes. They had long been conquered by Ji Tianqing's performance. Even those who had looked down on him, mocked him, and gloated at his misfortune were now proud and excited that he had become the domain lord. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Yan who were in the crowd, were extremely surprised and cheered without caring about their image. Yun Yao was still able to remain calm. Her beautiful face was filled with surprise and gratification. She whispered to herself, "Tianqing, you'll always be the most dazzling star in the night sky. In just 1 year, you've changed from the young master of the Ji family to the current Heavenly Stellar Region Lord. Thinking back on the past year, it's really like a dream." Ji Ku was so excited that tears flowed down her cheeks. She clenched her fists and waved them around. She said excitedly, "Brother Tianqing, you really did it. An 18-year-old domain lord, you've created another miracle." Yan Er's face was also red with excitement. She jumped up and down and shouted excitedly, dancing with Qian Yu. "Senior Tianqing. You're my idol. We're proud of you. The Heavenly Stellar Region is proud of you." Qian Yu flapped her little wings proudly and flew in the air. She smiled and shouted, "La la la. Our old Ji has become the domain lord. The youngest domain lord in history. The most awesome genius. We can do whatever we want on the mainland in the future. If I don't like anyone, I'll send a group of guards to kill them. If any idiot dares to provoke old Ji again, I'll send a garrison army to kill him 10,000 times." After announcing the news, the Imperial Tutor and Long Yunshao led the Imperial Guards back to the Imperial Palace at the peak of the mountain. The citizens in the square were discussing excitedly for a long time and were unwilling to leave. Ji Tianqing had just returned to the crowd and was surrounded by Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others. The three of them were full of concern and asked about his injuries. Knowing that his injuries were not life-threatening, everyone began to express their joy and excitement excitedly. At this moment, Ling Yishui, Kun Wu, and Fox Princess all rushed over to congratulate him. Junior Tianqing, congratulations. I'm afraid I'll have to call you Tianqing Domain Lord the next time we meet, right? Ling Yishui was more familiar with him, so he joked with him. Kuan Wu also smiled and cupped his hands. Ji Tianqing, from today onwards, you're the most honorable person in the human race. Congratulations. Even Fox Princess came over to congratulate him. She smiled and said, Prince Tianqing is indeed a peerless genius. You deserve to be the domain lord of the heavenly stellar region. Congratulations. Ji Tianqing smiled and returned the greeting. After exchanging a few words with the three of them, he turned around and left with Yun Yao and the others. Among the crowd in the square, there were a few princes of the human race, Tai of the Aqua tribe, and many other honorable people. These people were secretly paying attention to Ji Tianqing, but their thoughts were complicated. None of them came to get close to Ji Tianqing. Many of them knew that Ji Tianqing had killed Duanmu Yulong, so he had formed a blood feud with the Duanmu family. In the future, the Duanmu family would definitely seek revenge. Even though Ji Tianqing was a peerless genius and the new domain lord of the heavenly stellar region, he was still too young and had no foundation to speak of. Facing an ancient family like the Duanmu family, he could only be completely destroyed. Why would the princes of the human race show him kindness at this moment? 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and the others returned to the Yunlan residence in Liantian City. Ji Tianqing gave a few instructions to the others. Then, he entered the secret chamber in his residence and focused on healing his injuries. Ji Ku, Yan, and Qian Yu stayed in his residence, waiting for him to recover. Yun Yao was calm, wise, and meticulous. She was not blinded by surprise. She expected that Ji Tianqing would be in more danger in the future after killing Duanmu Yulong. So, she thought carefully for a long time. When she came up with some countermeasures, she summoned Yun Luo and gave him a few orders to make some arrangements and preparations. Then, she stayed in the Yunlan residence and strengthened the defense and vigilance of the residence to ensure that Ji Tianqing could safely cultivate and heal his injuries. In just a few days, all kinds of news about Ji Tianqing swept across the central plains like the wind. The news that Ji Tianqing had killed Duanmu Yulong and tied with Qian Shan Jinwu had become the domain lord of the heavenly stellar region had become a household name. It had become a topic that everyone knew. Chapter 612. Unknowingly, a month had passed. In this month, the news of Ji Tianqing becoming the Tianqian region lord spread throughout the central continent. The imperial court's imperial edict was also issued to the 9 southern regions and was known by all the major forces and countries. In nearly a month, hundreds of millions of people were talking about this matter, and he had truly become a peerless genius known by everyone in the central continent. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. Now that his cultivation had fully recovered, his injuries were almost healed. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Yan, and the others had already been waiting outside for him to come out. When everyone saw that he was in high spirits and had an extraordinary bearing, they all smiled and the worry in their hearts completely dissipated. After Ji Tianqing greeted everyone, he said, "Today is the day I receive the region lord's golden seal and I will leave for the imperial court later. At that time, the imperial court will arrange guards and honor for me and I will return to the Tianqian region to take up my post." Ji Ku and Yan already knew about this and were mentally prepared. Ji Ku quickly said, "Brother Tianqing, I want to go back with you. We have been away from the Qinyan kingdom for a year and it's time to go back and take a look." Yan also said, "Senior brother Tianqing, I also want to go back with you and see the situation of Master and Sky Pillar sect." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "I already guessed that you would definitely go back with me." After saying that, he looked at Yun Yao and asked, "Yao Yao, what about you?" Yun Yao hesitated for a moment before shaking her head gently and said, "Although I also want to go back with you and see the situation of Sky Pillar sect, I still have some matters to deal with. But I still have things to deal with here, so I won't be going back with you. Tianqing, although there is the imperial court's honor and guards on the way, you must be careful. Half a month ago, I heard that after Duanmu Yulong died, the Duanmu family hated you to the bone. The Duanmu family head was furious and said that he will make you pay with your blood. I am worried that you will suffer the revenge of the Duanmu family when you leave the central continent. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a confident smile, Yao Yao, don't worry. In the short term, the Duanmu family will not dare to take revenge on me. I killed Duanmu Yulong in the arena and everyone knows about it. If I go to the Tianjin region and I encounter an assassination on the way, there is no need to investigate. Everyone in the world will know that the murderer is Duanmu family. No matter how arrogant the Duanmu clan is, would they dare to assassinate the region lord appointed by the imperial court and openly opposed the imperial court? It turned out that Ji Tianqing had considered this matter long ago, and he was well aware of the pros and cons involved. That was why he was fearless. Duanmu Yulong, Duanmu Yulong, Duanmu Yulong families Duanmu families Duanmu Yulong s. However, Duanmu Yulong is the most outstanding son of the Duanmu family and the future head of the family. I'm only worried that the Duanmu clan's patriarch would be unable to bear the pain of losing his son and would take the risk out of desperation. Ji Tianqing nodded and said seriously, yes, I have to take precautions. I will be careful. Then, everyone waved goodbye to Yunyao and left the Yunlan courtyard. They rushed to the imperial court. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing brought Ji Ku and Yan to the heaven-connecting peak and climbed to the imperial court. The imperial tutor was already waiting for him outside the palace of heaven and earth. When he saw him, he led him to the emperor's study. The light was bright and in the elegant study, there was a dazzling golden light. The air was filled with a calming sandalwood fragrance. The object that was emitting the golden light was placed on the emperor's table. It was a large, square, golden seal. The emperor was wearing a dragon robe and a golden crown. He sat behind the table and was reading the documents, jade slips, and memorials on the table. Ji Tianqing followed the imperial tutor into the study and bowed respectfully, greetings to the emperor. Only then did the emperor put down the document in his hand and looked at Ji Tianqing with a gentle face. After looking at him for a while and seeing that he had regained his spirit, the emperor nodded slightly and said, Ji Tianqing, I now give you the Tianjin region lord's golden seal. You must carry this with you in the future. After that, the emperor stood up and handed the golden seal to Ji Tianqing solemnly. Ji Tianqing took the seal with both hands. He felt that the seal was as heavy as a mountain and contained a vast aura that could suppress heaven and earth and encompass all things. The most important thing was that the seal looked brand new. It seemed to have been cast not long ago. The imperial tutor saw him looking at the golden seal in confusion and explained with a smile, the imperial court did not set up the position of the Tianjin region lord before, so there is no Tianjin region lord's golden seal. This golden seal was cast by the emperor himself. It took him 10 days and a lot of effort. This seal is not only a token of your identity as the Tianjin region lord, but also an extraordinary soul-level magic treasure called the Seal of Mountains and Rivers. If you encounter an accident, this seal can help you block a fatal blow from a soul-refining realm expert. It can save you 3 times in total. You must use it appropriately. After hearing the imperial tutor's explanation, Ji Tianqing suddenly understood. I see. I didn't expect this Seal of Mountains and Rivers to be a soul-level magic treasure. Thank you very much, Emperor. This was the first time Ji Tianqing had come into contact with a soul-level magic treasure. The most powerful treasure he had come into contact with before was only a soul-level magic treasure. Although he did not know how powerful a soul-level magic treasure was. But this was a magic treasure cast by the Emperor himself. How could it be ordinary? The Emperor nodded and continued, now, the imperial court's edict has been passed down. All the cities in Central State and the 9 regions in the south know about it. In the Tianshan region, the Domain Lord's mansion has been completed at the location you chose. The garrison troops have also set off and are rushing to the Tianshan region day and night. The guards of honor and the accompanying guards are waiting outside. You will set off today and go to the Tianshan region to take office. Ji Tianqing solemnly put away the seal of mountains and rivers. After bowing to the emperor, he left the study. When he walked out of the palace of heaven and earth, he saw a mighty guard of honor waiting for him in the square in front of the palace. There were about 200 people in the guard of honor. Among them, more than 150 were elite imperial guards who had reached the origin core realm. In the guard, there was a huge golden bird as big as a house. It was the spiritual beast golden-winged bird. On the back of the golden-winged bird, there was a magnificent royal carriage with a canopy covering the top. Thousands of jewels were strung together to form a bead curtain. It looked extremely luxurious. The other 40 or so people in the guard of honor were all young women. They were also beautiful and talented. In addition, there was a guard of 100 people, who were also loyal and brave imperial guards. Of course, after he took office, the guard of honor would return to the imperial court. The guard of 100 people would stay in the Domain Lord's mansion. They were his private imperial guards. The journey from the imperial court to the Tianshan region was long. It would take a month to travel by spiritual beast. Therefore, the guard of honor and the guard of 300 people had to ride hundreds of spiritual beast birds. Chapter 6:13. Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time and immediately boarded the royal carriage on the back of the golden-winged bird. Ji Ku, Yan, and Qian Yu all sat with him in the spacious and luxurious royal carriage. More than 40 beauties held various musical instruments and played beautiful music. The guard of honor immediately set off. The guard of honor flew into the sky and majestically flew towards the south. More than 100 guards also rode on spirit birds and followed closely behind the guard of honor. Not long after, Ji Tianqing and the others left the imperial court and soared high in the sky. A middle-aged man with a resolute and dignified face rode on a 4-winged flying tiger alone and followed closely to the right of the royal carriage. Ji Tianqing saw that the middle-aged man was wearing a brocade robe and had a dignified bearing. He didn't seem like an ordinary guard, so he asked for his identity. The middle-aged man cupped his hands and bowed to him, replying respectfully, reporting to the Domain Lord, "Your subordinate Jiang Chen is now your deputy and the commander of the guard team. From now on, if you have any orders, just give the order, and I will do my best to carry them out." Ji Tianqing sized up Jiang Chen a few times before nodding and saying a few words of encouragement. In the following month, the guard of honor flew at full speed and headed straight for the Tianshan region in the south. The journey was long and Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time. He meditated on the royal carriage and silently improved his strength. In the beginning, Ji Ku and Yan were still a little excited. They admired the scenery of the mountains and rivers along the way and talked from time to time. They were finally going to return to the Tianshan region. Their hearts were filled with anticipation and they were still fantasizing about the scene after returning. But after a long time, the two felt bored and lost interest in admiring the scenery. They simply followed Ji Tianqing's example and meditated to cultivate. During the journey, everyone had a smooth journey and didn't encounter any danger. The situation was just as Ji Tianqing had expected. He had set out a mighty guard of honor and represented the dignity of the imperial court. Who would dare to attack him? After a month, Ji Tianqing and the others finally returned to the Tianshan region. At noon on this day, the majestic honor guard entered the ancient star realm. Jiang Chen took the initiative to ask Ji Tianqing for instructions. "Domain Lord, should we go to the newly built Domain Lord Manor first or the Sky Pillar sect?" News of the territorial lord's arrival had already reached the ancient star realm a few days ago. The sect masters of all the major sects have gathered at the Sky Pillar sect, waiting to welcome him. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then ordered Jiang Chen, "Then let's go directly to the Sky Pillar sect." Jiang Chen immediately passed down the order, and the entire team flew towards the Sky Pillar sect. After a few months of recuperation, the Sky Pillar sect had returned to its original state. 9 majestic mountain peaks formed the 9 Dragon spiritual pulse, which was protected by a powerful mountain protection array. Every mountain peak was overflowing with greenery, and the heavens and the earth were filled with rich spiritual energy. Although it would take at least a few years for the Sky Pillar sect to truly recover its strength, the Sky Pillar sect would still need a few more years. However, with Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji in charge, the Sky Pillar sect was still the number 1 sect in the ancient star realm, the leader of the 4 major sects. At this moment, in the square in front of the palace on the summit of the Crimson Firmament Peak, several experts and young talents were standing respectfully. Everyone looked at the sky in front of them, as if waiting for something. The leader was a middle-aged man with a head full of white hair. He was tall and sturdy, and his appearance was dignified. He was the sect master of the Sky Pillar sect, Chu Tianqing. Back then, he was injured by the Blood Demon King's reverse Bone Devil Blade. After a few months of recuperation, his injuries had completely healed, and his strength had also recovered. The white-haired old man standing beside him was Grand Elder Xiang Wuji. He wore a purple robe, and he looked dignified without being angry. Behind the two of them were 3 experts and 3 young talents. They were the sect masters and chief disciples of the 3 major sections. Sect Master Qi of the Pill Cauldron sect, Sect Master Yen of the 6 Harmony sect, and Granny Shueiyue of the Heart Moon sect stood side by side. The chief disciples of the 3 major sects stood behind the 3 sect masters. At this moment, Sect Master Qi frowned and said in a low voice, "Everyone, we've been standing here for half a day. Why hasn't the new territorial lord come yet? Do you think he won't come today?" Sect Master Yen said with a solemn expression, "Sect Master Qi, the new territorial lord has arrived. No matter what, we have to welcome him. Whether the territorial lord comes today or not, we have to wait here. We can't be negligent or disrespectful." Granny Shueiyue frowned and thought for a moment. She looked at Chu Tianqing and asked tentatively, "Sect Master Chu, the imperial court's decree said that the new territorial lord is called Ji Tianqing. I've been wondering, is the new territorial lord Chu's personal disciple, or is it a coincidence that he has the same name?" Hearing Granny Shueiyue's question, Feng Min, Wu Yu, and the chief disciple of the Pill Cauldron sect all listened attentively, waiting for Chu Tianqing's answer. Chu Tianqing said calmly, "I haven't received a letter from Tianqing, so I can't be sure if the new territorial lord is him." Sect Master Qi quickly shook his head and smiled. "Granny Shueiyue, is there a need to guess? It must be a coincidence that he has the same name. Sect Master Chu's personal disciple, Ji Tianqing, has only left the sect for a few months. How could he become a Sky Origin Stage elite, defeat all the geniuses of the Middle State, and become the territorial lord of the Tianqian region? In the entire Tianxian continent, you can't find such a heaven-defying genius." Sect Master Yen also nodded in agreement and said seriously, "According to the news from the Middle State, the new territorial lord defeated a Sky Origin Stage 6 genius, and even tied with a Sky Origin Stage 7 expert. Although Sect Master Chu's personal disciple is a genius, he can't be so monstrous. He has only left the Tianqian region for a few months. It's already a miracle that he can break through to the first level of Sky Origin Stage. This new territorial lord most likely has the same name as Sect Master Chu's personal disciple. After all, there are hundreds of millions of people in our clan, and there are many people with the same name." Just as everyone was discussing in low voices, the sky in front of them suddenly lit up with colorful brilliance, and there was a burst of music. "He's here. The new territorial lord has arrived." The few sect masters immediately stopped discussing and looked at the sky in front of them respectfully with their eyes wide open. After a while, a majestic guard of honor galloped from the sky in the distance. The troop was huge, and there were 200 people in the guard of honor. All of them were riding on spiritual birds, and there were many fairy-like beauties playing music. On both sides of the guard of honor, there were hundreds of guards in silver armor. They were all experts with powerful auras. In the sacred and majestic troop, there was an extraordinary golden-winged bird. It carried a magnificent royal carriage, showing an incomparably noble aura. Seeing this scene, the few sect masters immediately recalled the scene of the emperor's arrival. The new territorial lord's guard of honor and power was not inferior to the emperor of the imperial court. It made everyone feel a strong sense of respect. After a while, the guard of honor of the new territorial lord arrived above the crimson cloud peak and slowly landed on the square in front of the palace. Chu Tianxing immediately led everyone to bow and pay their respects to the luxurious royal carriage. We welcome the arrival of the territorial lord. Everyone bowed, lowered their heads, and bowed their hands. Their postures were respectful, and they did not dare to look up at the scene in the royal carriage. In the royal carriage, a young man's voice sounded. It was calm and majestic. "Everyone, please rise." Following this voice, a handsome young man wearing a white robe walked out from the jade carriage and arrived at the square with majestic strides. Chu Tianxing and the others raised their heads and looked at the new territorial lord who walked out of the jade carriage. When everyone saw the appearance of the territorial lord, they suddenly trembled and widened their eyes in disbelief. "Tian Xing. It's really you." Chu Tianxing's face was full of surprise, and his eyes were filled with disbelief and surprise. The expressions of the three sect masters also became very interesting. They were all shocked and stunned. Chapter 6:14. Ji Tianxing. It's you. You're the new region leader. How is that possible? Sect leader Qi and sect leader Yan were stunned for a long time before they came back to their senses and exclaimed in disbelief. Just now, everyone was still discussing. The two of them swore that the new region leader and Ji Tianxing had the same name. But now, a miracle had happened. The peerless genius who was famous in Central State and had crushed all the geniuses was really Chu Tianxing's direct disciple. He was the Ji Tianxing that they knew. How could they not be inexplicably shocked? Not only were the three sect leaders shocked, but the three chief disciples were also stunned. They could not believe their eyes. Especially Feng Min and Wu Yu, who were the most affected. The shock in their hearts could not be described with words. A few months ago, the two of them had fought side by side with Ji Tianxing and destroyed the demon clan stronghold. Now, they were still the same. They were still the chief disciples of the Heart Moon sect and the Six Unity sect. Ji Tianxing had become the noble emperor, the peerless genius who was famous in Central State, and the overlord of Tianjin region. Back then, they were all geniuses of equal status. Now, the difference between their status and Ji Tianxing's was like the difference between clouds and mud. Ji Tianxing's status was too noble, and his halo was too dazzling. They could only look up to him and worship him. Just as everyone was shocked and still in a daze, Ji Tianxing stepped in front of Chu Tianxing. He smiled and bowed to Chu Tianxing. He said respectfully, "Master, I'm back." Chu Tianxing quickly reached out to hold his arms. He shook his head and said, "Tianxing, you can't do this. Now that you're the region leader, how can you bow to your subordinate?" As the region leader, Ji Tianxing was in charge of every inch of land in Tianjin region. Everyone in the Tianjin region, no matter who they were, was his subordinate. However, Ji Tianxing shook his head and said seriously, "Master, although I am the territory lord of the Tianjin region, I am also your disciple. I cannot abandon the relationship between master and disciple." Hearing this, Chu Tianxing was filled with gratification and excitement. He felt that he could die without regrets having such a disciple in this life. The three sect leaders were filled with emotions. They were both envious and jealous of Chu Tianqing. Xiang Wuji stroked his beard and revealed a gratified and excited expression. He smiled and nodded, "Good. This is great. Tianqing, you're in a high position now, but you're neither arrogant nor rash. You still respect your master and Dao. You're simply a role model for all martial artists in the world." Ji Tianqing also cupped his hands in greeting and said with a smile, "Old master, this disciple has come to visit you." Xiang Wuji's expression changed. He took a few steps back and waved his hand. "Don't. This was unacceptable. You are the heavenly stellar region lord, but I am not your master. How can you bow to me? Wouldn't that be too much for this old man?" Ji Tianqing and Chu Tianqing both smiled and looked at Xiang Wuji playfully. It was obvious that although Xiang Wuji spoke casually, when Ji Tianqing bowed to him, he was flattered and found it hard to accept. Then, Ji Ku and Yan Er walked to the side of the crowd and bowed to Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji. Everyone chatted with each other and they were all very excited. "Master, this is not the place to talk. Let's go back to the towering sky palace and talk." Ji Tianqing chatted with everyone for a while. Then, he led the crowd through the square and into the towering sky palace. Chu Tianqing, Xiang Wuji, and Ji Ku quickly followed and entered the towering sky palace with smiles on their faces. As for the people from the three sects, they were completely ignored and left on the side. Although the three sect leaders were embarrassed, they did not dare to have any disrespectful thoughts and quickly followed into the palace. Ji Tianqing sat at the head of the table. Everyone sat on both sides of the palace and reported the situation to Ji Tianqing. Especially Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji, they were the most excited and surprised today. The two of them told Ji Tianqing about the recent situation of the Towering Sky Sect and the Star Ancient Realm in detail. After listening to the two of them, Ji Tianqing finally understood the situation in the Star Ancient Realm. He said bluntly in front of everyone, "The Demon Emperor has already escaped from the Tianqian region and is fleeing to the northern desert. The Monarch Mansion has been secretly investigating the Demon Emperor's whereabouts. Soon, when the Monarch Mansion finds the Demon Emperor's whereabouts, they will take action and completely eliminate the Demon Emperor. The situation in the Tianqian region has stabilized. The Towering Sky Sect also needs to develop quickly and recover as soon as possible. In the future, I will not stay in the Tianqian region. I will return to the central province to cultivate. At that time, the Tianqian region situation will still be managed by the Towering Sky Sect. Sect leader master will have to work hard." Ji Tianqing's words were to announce to everyone that the Tianqian region would still be managed by the Towering Sky Sect. He wanted to be a hands-off manager. He would only appear when something big happened in the Tianqian region. When the sect leaders of the three major sects heard this, they were surprised and jealous. However, they did not dare to raise any objections. Originally, sect leader Qi and sect leader Yan thought that the situation in the Star Ancient Realm had changed. They had a chance to compete with the Towering Sky Sect and even compete for the position of the number one sect. However, now that Ji Tianqing had become the Tianqian region lord, they no longer had the slightest chance. After the disaster, not only would the Towering Sky Sect not weaken, but it would also glow with even more dazzling brilliance and become even more powerful. Next, Ji Tianqing gave a few more orders to everyone and had a private conversation with Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji for a while. 4 hours later, Ji Tianqing left the Towering Sky Sect with the honor guard and headed to the Domain Lord Mansion. When the Imperial Court built the Domain Lord Mansion, it was built in the place he chose according to his decision. The Domain Lord Mansion was in the Star Ancient Realm. It was located in a mountain range with abundant spiritual qi and was only 600 miles away from the Towering Sky Sect. The mountain range was named the Tianqing Mountain Range. It had a radius of 300 miles. The experts of the Imperial Court used formations to arrange the 300 miles of mountains and rivers into a huge formation, forming a super spirit vein. In the center of the spiritual vein was a mountain that was nearly 10,000 meters high. The Domain Lord Mansion was built on the peak of the mountain. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the Domain Lord Mansion, he was also shocked by the imposing aura of the mountain and the magnificent palace. Above the 10,000-meter-tall peak was a boundless sea of white clouds. In the sea of clouds stood a group of palaces with a radius of 20 miles. There were jade palaces, pavilions, terraces, and even magnificent palaces. The setting sun shone on the Domain Lord Mansion, causing golden clouds to appear in the sea of clouds. The entire Domain Lord Mansion was covered with a layer of sacred golden light. It was as ethereal and sacred as an immortal cave. The imperial court had built the Domain Lord Mansion for him. It was more magnificent and luxurious than his cave in the Imperial King Mansion. After Ji Tianqing entered the Domain Lord Mansion, he asked the honor guard and guards to leave to rest. He took Ji Ku and Qian Yu to wander around the mansion and enjoy the beautiful scenery. The Domain Lord Mansion was so big that it would not be crowded even if there were tens of thousands of people living in it. If they were to stroll around leisurely, it would take them at least a day. Such a rare residence that was like a heavenly palace would be his private mansion in the future. Chapter 6:15. The imperial court had already arranged everything in the domain chief's manor. Ji Tianqing did not need to worry about it anymore. He strolled around the mansion and only returned to the study at night. The guard commander, Jiang Chen, rushed to the study and reported the situation to him respectfully. "My lord, the 100,000 soldiers of the garrison army have arrived in the ancient star realm. They are stationed in the Tianfeng plains and are waiting for your orders. In addition, everything in the domain chief's manor has been arranged properly. Currently, there were over 1,000 servants and odd-job workers, 300 maids, and 200 guards in the mansion. The guards under my command are not included in this list. They will follow you and protect you from now on." Ji Tianqing listened to Jiang Chen's report and pondered for a moment. He then gave a series of instructions. He did not need to worry about the trivial matters of the domain chief's manor. Jiang Chen and the steward appointed by the imperial court would take care of it. With the prestige and defensive power of the domain chief's manor, no one would dare to invade. Moreover, there were dozens of Tianyuan formations inside and outside the domain chief's manor. It was also protected by a soul-grade formation. The domain chief's manor was definitely the safest place in the Tianqin domain. No one could sneak in unless they were attacked by a soul-refining expert. As for the 100,000 soldiers of the garrison army, they were all brave and skilled in battle. The army of a mortal kingdom could not be compared to them. Ji Tianqing divided the 100,000 soldiers into 5 legions. 4 of them were sent to guard the 4 borders of the Tianqin domain. The 5th legion was stationed in the ancient star realm. They were ready to respond at any time. The problem of how to support the 100,000 soldiers and the domain chief's manor was very simple. The 10 countries and hundreds of martial arts sects in the Tianqin domain had to pay a certain amount of taxes to the domain chief's manor every year. This was a shocking amount of wealth that was enough to support hundreds of thousands of people. In the next few days, Ji Tianqing stayed in the domain chief's manor to fulfill the duties of the domain chief and deal with a lot of official business. Although he had become an overlord at the age of 18, it was the first time he dealt with such an important matter. However, he was able to deal with any situation calmly analyze, and think wisely before finally making a decision. Moreover, the imperial court had already considered this problem. They had assigned 2 military counselors to help him come up with plans. In this way, he would be able to handle official business with ease. Unknowingly, 3 days had passed. On the morning of the 4th day, Jiang Chen came to report the situation to him. Reporting to the domain lord, the decree has been sent to the royal Azure Kingdom. You can depart at any time. Ji Tianqing immediately passed down the order, we are to return to the royal Azure dynasty immediately. I've already left Clear Sky Kingdom for a full year, it's time for me to go back and visit my father. Jiang Chen cupped his fists and said sincerely, when my lord returns to the royal Azure Kingdom, the entire royal Azure Kingdom will respectfully welcome your arrival. My lord, this is truly a return to your hometown in glory. Ji Tianqing smiled and led Jiang Chen out of the study, heading towards the square in the manor. In the square, the guards of honor and the guards had already finished their preparations. After Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke boarded the royal carriage, the entourage set off on their journey. They left the domain chief's manor and rushed towards the Qingyun kingdom. A year ago, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke had left the Green Cloud Imperial City and rushed to the Star Ancient Realm in a carriage. At that time, the two of them took nearly a month to enter the Sky Pillar sect in the Star Ancient Realm. Today, Ji Tianqing's guards of honor only took 12 hours to cross thousands of miles of mountains and rivers and arrived at the Royal Azure Dynasty. In the evening, the sun was setting. The guards of honor were about to enter the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City. Ji Tianqing sat in the royal carriage, looking down at the land in front of him. Looking at the ancient imperial city, his heart was filled with many emotions. Thinking back to when he was in the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City, he was persecuted by Ling Yunfei and Ji Ling. He was reduced to a good-for-nothing young master who was ridiculed by the people in the city. Fortunately, Kenshin's tomb appeared, allowing him to inherit Kenshin's lost skills and embark on a strange and unique path of swordsmanship. It allowed him to recover his strength and reclaim the qualification to enter the Sky Pillar sect. After he entered the Sky Pillar sect, he went through hundreds of hardships and tribulations before he finally stood out and became the emperor whose name shook the central state. Recalling the past, everything was still vivid in his mind. In this short span of a year, Ji Tianqing went from being a good-for-nothing young master who was humiliated in the past to being the overlord of the Sky Pillar region. Such a heaven-defying change was like a mud worm turning into a divine dragon. It was unreal when one recalled it. Under the setting sun, outside the majestic city gates of the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City, 300 armored and armed royal guards stood on both sides of the main road outside the city gates respectfully, showing a dignified and solemn aura. On the wide and straight Bluestone Avenue, the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor led the civil and military officials to stand in silence, quietly waiting for their arrival. There were hundreds of people present, but no one dared to make a noise or even whisper. Everyone knew that the Honorable Territorial Lord would be arriving at the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City today. The Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor and the civil and military officials were puzzled. Why did the newly appointed Territorial Lord want to inspect the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City? Among the 10 countries in the Sky Pillar region, the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City was ranked at the bottom. There was nothing outstanding about it that was worthy of the Territorial Lord's personal inspection. Therefore, the Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor was a little nervous and thought to himself, could it be that the Territorial Lord has just taken office and urgently needs to establish his authority, so he wants to start with the Royal Azure Dynasty Imperial City? However, no matter how worried and anxious he was, after receiving the order, he had no choice but to go out of the city to welcome the Territorial Lord. Just as everyone was waiting anxiously, a colorful glow appeared in the sky in front of them, accompanied by waves of beautiful music. The Royal Azure Dynasty Emperor and the civil and military officials were immediately energized, revealing a look of anticipation and awe as they looked at the colorful glow in the sky. In the blink of an eye, a majestic guard of honor flew from the sky and slowly landed on the plains outside the city. The hundreds of people in the guard of honor all exuded a powerful and dignified aura. They were riding on spiritual birds that the officials had never seen before, appearing very mysterious and powerful. Even the more than 40 maidservants playing the musical instruments in the guard of honor were like fairies who had descended from the heavens in the eyes of the civil and military officials. As for the luxurious jade carriage on the back of the golden-winged bird, it was extremely dazzling, like the carriage of the gods. Not only were the civil and military officials and the royal guards filled with fear, even the royal Azure dynasty emperor was extremely respectful towards the territorial lord in the royal carriage. Your subject welcomes the arrival of the territorial lord in person. When the guard of honor landed, the royal Azure dynasty emperor immediately knelt on the ground and bowed respectfully. Behind him, the civil and military officials and the 300 royal guards also knelt in unison and kowtowed with a very sincere expression. However, the territorial lord in the royal carriage did not speak, nor did he show his face. The majestic guard of honor stepped onto the bluestone road and headed straight for the imperial city gates. Chapter 6:16. The new territorial lord did not speak nor did he show his face. After arriving at the royal Azure city, the guard of honor immediately entered the city. The royal Azure emperor and the civil and military officials felt uneasy and could only follow closely behind the guard of honor. Everyone prayed silently in their hearts that the territorial lord would not make things difficult for the royal Azure kingdom. After all, the territorial lord only needed to say one word to decide the fate of the royal Azure kingdom and the survival of the royal Azure kingdom. After the guard of honor entered the city, they went straight to the center of the city. The citizens of the city came out to greet the emperor and knelt on both sides of the road. When the guard of honor passed by, the citizens hurriedly kowtowed in salute. The royal Azure emperor thought that the guard of honor was going to the palace, so he had already sent people back to the palace to greet the emperor. However, when the guard of honor reached the city square, they turned and walked towards the south side of the city. The royal Azure emperor and the officials were dumbfounded. They did not understand what this meant and could not guess where the territorial lord was going. Helpless, the royal Azure emperor and the officials could only follow the guard of honor to the south side of the city. After a quarter of an hour, the guard of honor arrived at the gates of the G mansion and stopped. The royal Azure emperor and the officials were stunned. They did not understand what the territorial lord was going to do. Why did he not go to the palace but came to the G mansion? Could it be that the territorial lord was acquainted with the G family? Or was there some connection? Thinking of this, the royal Azure emperor was filled with doubt and anticipation. He stared at the royal carriage and the G mansion's gates with wide eyes. When had the guards of the G mansion ever seen such a sacred and majestic parade? Even if it was only the royal Azure emperor, the guards would still have to greet him in fear and trepidation. At this moment, the guard of honor stopped in front of the G mansion's gates. There were at least 300 of them and their grandeur was extremely grand. Behind the guard of honor, the royal Azure dynasty emperor and his court officials stood respectfully, as if they were servants following the emperor. What kind of awe-inspiring and majestic parade was this? The guards at the gates were stunned. When they regained their senses, they rushed into the G mansion and reported the news to the master. Not long after, the entire G mansion was alarmed. Everyone was inexplicably shocked, and in fear and trepidation, they hurried to the gate to greet the emperor. The juniors and maids of the G family were all kneeling on the square in front of the palace, waiting for the arrival of the big shot. The patriarch, Ji Chongkong, was still able to maintain his calm. He quickly led a few people in charge to the entrance. After arriving at the entrance, when Ji Chongkong and the others clearly saw the formation outside the door, their expressions changed drastically. At this moment, the royal Azure dynasty emperor was afraid that the Ji family would neglect the territorial lord, so he quickly reminded them in a dignified voice, "Ji Chongkong, what are you waiting for? Quickly come and welcome the new region lord. Domain lord." Hearing these words, Ji Chongkong and the other leaders trembled in confusion and shock. They couldn't understand why the honorable domain lord would suddenly grace the G mansion with his presence. Several leaders hurriedly knelt on both sides of the door, lowering their heads in fear and trepidation, not daring to raise their heads to look at the domain lord's royal carriage. With their status, daring to raise their heads to look was a disrespect to the domain lord, a crime punishable by death. Only the patriarch, Ji Chongkong, remained standing. He quickly walked towards the guard of honor, with a respectful attitude, and was about to immediately bow. However, just as he was about to bow, a handsome and valiant young man in a white robe flew out from the imperial carriage. Swoosh! No one saw the white-robed young man's movements clearly. They only saw a flash of white light, and the white-robed young man covered a distance of 10 steps and landed in front of Ji Changkong. Father! Please rise, how can I accept such a grand gesture? The white-robed young man quickly reached out to hold Ji Changkong's arms. His handsome face was filled with concern, and his voice contained a trace of excitement. Ji Changkong was stunned. His eyes were fixed on the white-robed young man in front of him, and he was immediately dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that the legendary peerless genius, the Honorable Tianqin Region Lord, was actually his son, Ji Tianqing. No matter how calm and collected Ji Changkong was, he couldn't regain his senses at this moment, and couldn't say a word. Not only Ji Changkong, but everyone else was also stunned. They were so shocked that their mouths were agape, but they couldn't make a sound. Although there were hundreds of people outside the Ji mansion, it was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. The leaders of the Ji family were stunned. The royal Azure Dynasty Emperor was dumbfounded. All the civil and military officials were dumbstruck. Their minds went blank. No one could believe that the sacred and dignified Region Lord was actually the eldest son of the Ji family, Ji Tianqing. Although there were some officials who didn't know Ji Tianqing. But Ji Tianqing addressed Ji Changkong as his father, and this was enough to prove his identity. At this moment, hundreds of people were collectively dumbfounded. Their minds were blank, and they had completely lost the ability to think and speak. In everyone's hearts, the eldest young master of the Ji family, Ji Tianqing, was once a good-for-nothing young master whose cultivation was crippled. Even if he had a fortuitous encounter and successfully entered the Sky Pillar sect, he was now just an ordinary cultivator with some talent. But this extraordinary white-robed young man in front of them was a world-renowned peerless genius, the incomparably honorable Region Lord of the Tianqin region, the overlord of the 10 nations. No one could connect that ordinary young master of the Ji family with this sacred and honorable Region Lord in front of them. This was simply like a legend, too exaggerated and outrageous. Everyone was stunned for a long time. Ji Changkong was the first to regain his senses. His hands tightly held onto Ji Tianqing's arm, and his face flushed with excitement as his entire body trembled. Tianqing. You are actually the Region Lord of the Tianqin region. No matter how calm Ji Changkong was, he was so excited that his blood was boiling, and he stuttered. It couldn't be helped, the shock and surprise this matter gave him was simply too great. Even now, he still felt like he was in a dream as he held on to Ji Tianqing's arm with both hands. It was very unreal. Ji Tianqing supported his father and nodded with a smile on his face. He bowed respectfully and said, "Father, I am unfilial. I have been away from home for a year before returning to visit you. In order to make up for my mistakes, I did not even go to the palace when I returned to the royal Azure dynasty. I came home to pay my respects to you first." Ji Changkong was so emotional that tears streamed down his face. He could only nod heavily, unable to say another word. The royal Azure dynasty emperor and the civil and military officials finally regained their senses. Their hearts were filled with extreme shock. Suddenly, a few muffled thuds could be heard from the originally quiet procession. Some of the officials who had offended the Ji family or had grievances with them were scared half to death on the spot. Their bodies trembled like a sieve. A few people with weaker psychological endurance fainted on the spot. Their vision turned black and they fell to the ground, unconscious. After all, no matter how powerful these people were in the royal Azure dynasty, in front of the sacred Region Lord, they were like ants in the grass. The Region Lord only needed to say one word to turn them all into ashes. Even the royal Azure dynasty emperor did not dare to protect them. You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.